There was a man called Yok Sung. He was heavily in debt with a moneylender. He was desperate because he was unable to pay off his debt, so he planned to take his own life in a bridge. There were people nearby who saw him. They were scared and trying to stop Yok Sung by asking him to get off the bridge, but Yok Sung refused to get off the bridge. He thought that there was no point for him to continue living because it would only make his family suffer more. Suddenly, a young man called Chun Ji-hoon came to the bridge. Ji-hoon was a lawyer, but Yok Sung thought that he was the moneylender who wanted to collect his debt. But Ji-hoon tried to explain calmly that he was actually a lawyer who had been hired by Yok Sung himself. Yok Sung was confused when he heard his explanation, but then he remembered the time when he was hiding from the debt collectors in a toilet. While he was hiding in that toilet, he saw an advertising brochure of Ji-hoon's legal consulting service. According to that advertising brochure, anyone could hire Ji-hoon by paying only 1,000 won for his legal service. At first, Yok Sung thought that it was only some kind of joke because he thought it was silly and impossible that there was a lawyer who could be hired by paying only 1,000 won. So, he tried to contact the number in that advertising brochure, but turned out, the service that was advertised in that advertising brochure was real and not a joke. The real adventure then began. At the office of the prosecutor, there was an apprentice called Baek Mari. She was interrogating a pathetic man who was trying to defend himself. From the way she talked, it seemed like Baek Mari was an honest yet persistent prosecutor. She refused to give up easily if she knew that she was right, but because she still lacked of experience, she didn't handle a case comprehensively. Suddenly, her boss called Yi Jin came to her room. She asked her to handle a case of a moneylender. At another place, there was a man called Samu Jang. He was busy working at his laundry service, but he was hiding immediately when he saw Ji-hoon coming to that place. He came out of his hiding place when he thought that Ji-hoon had left that place, but turned out, Ji-hoon was still there. Mu Jang was surprised when he found him. Mu Jang was Ji-hoon's employee who planned to resign from his work, but Ji-hoon didn't allow him and tore his resignation letter instead. Then, they both were dancing ridiculously together. Mu Jang had a wife called Young Ok. Young Ok suddenly came to that place. She came there to persuade her husband to come with Ji-hoon. She felt bad because Ji-hoon had helped their family for so many times. It wasn't that Mu Jang refused to help Ji-hoon and repay his good deed. He was just mad at Ji-hoon because Ji-hoon only charged 1,000 won for anyone who used his legal service, and because of that, he became miserable because he rarely got paid by Ji-hoon. But Ji-hoon didn't care about that. He told Mu Jang that it was the simplicity of life that would lead them to a better and happier life. After that, Ji-hoon and Mu Jang came to the office of the moneylender whom Yok Sung borrowed his money from. When they arrived there was nobody in that office, so they cooked some noodles and ate them together as if they were at home. Suddenly, Baek Mari and her colleagues came to that office too. Mari, who saw them there, confronted them immediately because she thought that they were the moneylender. But Ji-hoon, who was in the middle of eating his noodles, didn't care about her. Mari then got mad and spilled his noodles. Ji-hoon became mad and explained that they were only guests there. Mari, who heard that, was soon overwhelmed with shame and guilt. Then, she introduced herself immediately. She said that she came there to do her job and take away the property there. Ji-hoon chose to stay there because if that moneylender was caught by them, he wouldn't be able to collect his money. Because of that, he pretended to be friendly with Mari. He wanted to see the warrant and know what case that moneylender was dealing with. He said that the case was pretty easy. If that moneylender had a good lawyer, he could only get punished with a probation instead of the punishment that was proposed by the prosecutor. Mari, who heard that, was getting more annoyed by him. Suddenly, the moneylender whom they were looking for came to that place. He was known under the name of Fire Bear. He panicked when he saw Ji-hoon at his office. He knew Ji-hoon and called him Mr. Prosecutor. He became even more panicked when Ji-hoon started to talk about his debt. Apparently, Ji-hoon used to work as a prosecutor and handle the case of that moneylender. That was why Fire Bear knew him and called him Mr. Prosecutor. Seeing that Mari kept staring at them, Ji-hoon began to threaten Fire Bear about his hard case. He said that Fire Bear would straightly get punished by the prosecutor who was staring at them. Because of that threat, Fire Bear began to feel scared. He begged Ji-hoon to help him since he had become a lawyer now. Ji-hoon was glad because his plan worked. Apparently, he purposely threatened Fire Bear because he wanted him to hire him as a lawyer and charged him with high price. Since he had just been hired by Fire Bear as his lawyer, he asked the warrant to Mari. He pretended to study that warrant even though he had studied it before. Then, he counted down the time and told Mari to leave that place. Mari was getting more annoyed by his audacity. She asked him what was his right to tell her to leave that place because he was only Fire Bear's lawyer. Ji-hoon answered that they were supposed to make an arrest in the daytime because according to that warrant, they weren't allowed to make an arrest in the evening. Meanwhile, the time showed that it was already 1 minute past 7 in the evening, which meant that Mari was not allowed to make an arrest. Even though Mari was mad, she finally had to leave that place without arresting anyone or taking away any property. At the same time, Yok Sung came to that place to deal with his debt. The moneylender counted his debt and told him that he owed him 100 million won. Yok Sung was shocked when he heard that because last time he remembered he only owed him 30 million won. He became more desperate because he had no idea how to get that much money to pay off his debt. Ji-hoon finally spoke up. He objected to that fantastic amount of money. He accused Fire Bear of miscounting the debt and then he counted the debt by himself. Fire Bear was happy because the debt that Ji-hoon counted was 100,030,000 won, but apparently, it was not Yok-sung's debt that Ji-hoon had counted, but rather the price that he charged for Fire Bear for hiring him as a lawyer. He purposely waited for Fire Bear to count Yok-sung's debt so he could charge him with the same amount of money that he told Yok-sung to pay. Then, he explained about the details of his charge. He said that it consisted of the down payment which was 5 million won, the foreclosure defense which was 50 million won, the fee for interviewing the prosecutor which was 40 million won, and the processing and consulting fee which was 5 million won. He also charged him with 30,000 won for his noodles that had been gotten rid by Mari. That was how he could come up with 100,030,000 won to charge Fire Bear. Fire Bear was furious at Ji-hoon when he heard that, but Ji-hoon threatened to call Mari if Ji-hoon refused to pay him. Fire Bear finally gave up and paid Ji-hoon. He believed that Ji-hoon could save him from the severe punishment that was proposed by Mari because Ji-hoon had proven himself as a good prosecutor who sent him to jail back then. After Fire Bear paid Ji-hoon, Yok-sung finally could pay off his debt. When Ji-hoon was about to leave that place, he took another amount of money. Fire Bear was mad when he saw that. At the outside, Yok-sung thanked Ji-hoon for helping him. He planned to pay him more than what he charged him, but Ji-hoon refused because 1,000 won was more than enough for him. Ji-hoon only told Yok-sung to live a better life and not dealing with any moneylender from now on. He even gave the extra money that he took from Fire Bear to Yok-sung so Yok-sung could start a new life. Yok-sung cried right away because of that. He bowed to Yok-sung and thanked him once again for helping him. In a toilet at the station, there was a drunken man who almost fell to the ground, but fortunately, a janitor called Lee helped him and prevented him from falling right away. But since Lee's hands were holding that drunken man's wallet, that drunken man accused Lee of robbing him. He even reported him to the police. Moo Jang was walking stealthily to his office and finally arrived there. He didn't want to be seen by the owner of the building because he hadn't paid their rent. When he came inside of that office, he saw a woman waiting for him there. Apparently, that woman was Lee's wife. Lee was the janitor whom was accused of stealing at the station yesterday. Lee's wife came to that office to ask Moo Jang and Ji-hoon to help her husband. Ji-hoon had no idea why Moo Jang was willing to help her. He was confused because all this time, Moo Jang always complained about how they charged their clients too cheaply. Apparently, Moo Jang had learned something from Yok-sung's case. He learned that saving people's lives was more important than money. Because of that, he was willing to help Lee's wife, especially after he found out that Lee's daughter was being hospitalized because she suffered from heart failure. The problem was, Lee had been arrested for 4 times because of the same reason, so, before they handled his case, Ji-hoon wanted to make sure everything first. They were heading to the hospital by using their old vehicle to visit Lee's daughter called So-mi. But So-mi thought that her father was still gone sailing for fish. She had no idea when her father would return. She also had no idea that her father was actually in prison. She asked Ji-hoon to promise her to bring her father home. Outside of So-mi's room, Lee's wife told Ji-hoon and Moo Jang that her husband had promised not to steal again. Lee even injured his hand to prove that he was serious this time. She had difficulty in finding any lawyer to help them because all lawyers that she had met didn't believe them. They also asked for very expensive down payment just to reduce Lee's punishment. Ji-hoon decided not to make any decision before he met Lee himself. When Ji-hoon and Moo Jang were about to leave the hospital, they saw Lee's wife having trouble because she was unable to pay the hospital bills. Suddenly, Moo Jang approached her and offered himself to pay the hospital bills, but unfortunately, Moo Jang was shocked when he found out about the total amount of money that Lee's wife had to pay. He was unable to pay the office rent, let alone to pay that much money for the hospital bills. But in order to save his face, he promised to pay the hospital bills. In the car, he finally regretted what he did. He blamed Ji-hoon because he thought that Ji-hoon had washed his brain into becoming a fake hero. They had another problem when they found out that the prosecutor who handled Lee's case was Baek Mari, and right now, Mari was interrogating Lee at the office. She told Lee to make an apology so they could reduce Lee's punishment. Lee became depressed when he heard that. He suddenly remembered his promise to his daughter. He promised his daughter that he would always be by her side and become a normal father for her. He also promised that he would be home on her birthday. Because of that, Lee finally wrote the apology even though he was not guilty. After that, he gave the apology letter to Mari. Yi-jin read the letter and thought that it wouldn't be able to reduce Lee's punishment, especially after she considered that Lee had been arrested for the same reason for 4 times. So, Mari needed to make an appeal to reduce Lee's punishment. Mari received a gift from her best friend called Min Hyuk. The gift was a book about law. It seemed like Min Hyuk was a highly annoying person. Ji-hoon finally met with Lee. Lee seemed very sad because he kept thinking about his daughter. He told Ji-hoon that he had written an apology for the crime he hadn't committed because he had no idea how to save himself. He was desperate because nobody believed him, so he begged Ji-hoon to help him. Ji-hoon remembered his promise to So-mi to bring her father home. Then, he told Lee to swear by his daughter's name that he didn't commit such crime. After he saw that Lee was serious, he finally decided to help him. As usual, he only charged his client with 1,000 won. He also asked Lee to promise that he would become a good father to So-mi. After that, Ji-hoon came to the station. He pretended to help a drunken man who almost fell to the ground, but he made it obvious that he was stealing that man's wallet. Because of that, he finally ended up at the police station. When that drunken man found out that Ji-hoon was a lawyer, he apologized to him immediately. He said that this was only a mistake. Because of that, Ji-hoon realized that this world was an unfair place. He saw that people always treated other people based on their status. He was really stealing that drunken man's wallet, but that man forgave him right away when he found out that he was a lawyer. At the office, Mari came with an upset face because she found out that there was a lawyer who was willing to defend Lee by taking a jury trial. She was upset because she had made a lot of effort to reduce Lee's punishment. Yi-jin was smiling at her, trying to tell her that the lawyer she was talking about was in that room with them. Mari was surprised when she saw that the lawyer was Ji-hoon. She became even more confused when she found out that Ji-hoon and Yi-jin knew each other. Yi-jin then told her that she used to work together with Ji-hoon, but Ji-hoon had resigned from his work as a prosecutor and became a lawyer now. Ji-hoon mentioned about Mari's status as an apprentice there. Mari was annoyed when she heard that. She was getting more annoyed when Ji-hoon tore Lee's apology letter in front of them. Ji-hoon said that he did this because his client told him to. Mari, who was annoyed by him, threatened Ji-hoon that they wouldn't reduce Lee's punishment. Ji-hoon responded her by asking if she had ever thought that Lee was not guilty. He also told Mari to open her book and read the page number 108. After that, he left that office immediately. Even though Mari was mad at Ji-hoon, she kept doing what Ji-hoon told him. Yi-jin explained about that page to her. It had something to do with Lee's case. Yi-jin said that she was curious about how Ji-hoon would defend his client, because when she was still working with Ji-hoon as a prosecutor, she remembered that Ji-hoon was such a persistent and brave prosecutor who refused to give up easily. After that, Mari called her best friend who lived in the USA. He was Min Hyuk, the person who had sent her a book. He always gave Mari unnecessary advices without being asked because he actually had a crush on Mari. Mari called him to consult about something, but before she managed to talk about her problems with him, she was surprised when she saw Ji-hoon studying Lee's case there. Seeing Ji-hoon was serious in studying Lee's case, Mari pushed herself to do the same. She studied very hard until she fell asleep in that office. Not long after that, the trial was about to begin. Ji-hoon approached Mari and smiled at her absurdly. He also brought a pink box with him. In the courtroom, Mari explained that Lee had been arrested for 4 times because of the same crime. She also said that Lee committed his crime when he was still on probation. Ji-hoon defended Lee by saying that his client denied that he had committed such crime. He said that Lee's intention was only to help the drunken man. To support his claim, Ji-hoon invited the drunken man to the courtroom to provide evidence as a court witness. The drunken man told everybody there about the chronology of the event. He said that he still remembered vividly that Lee was trying to steal his wallet. Because of that, he reported him to the police immediately. At the police station, he finally found out that Lee was an ex-convict who had been arrested for the same crime. Ji-hoon then asked the drunken man about the drink he had consumed that night. The drunken man answered that he only consumed 2 glasses of beer, so he wasn't really drunk that night. Ji-hoon smiled when he heard that answer. Then, he played the CCTV footage from the restaurant where the drunken man had a drink with his friends that night. From that CCTV footage, it could be seen that the drunken man drank more than 2 glasses of beer. Therefore, the drunken man's statement that he only consumed 2 glasses of beer was not valid. Ji-hoon said that the drunken man was so drunk that night that his memory and statement should be questioned. He said that they needed to be careful because it wouldn't be funny that Lee's future was destroyed because of someone else's false memory. The drunken man was mad when he heard what Ji-hoon said. He reminded Ji-hoon about Lee's status as an ex-convict who had been arrested for 4 times because of the same crime. He then mocked and verbally harassed Lee because of his dark past and social status. When the judge heard that, she told the drunken man to stop talking immediately. One of people who attended that trial was an owner of the biggest law firm in South Korea called Baek Hyun-moo. Baek Hyun-moo was also Mari's grandfather. He was curious about Ji-hoon, who was very different as a lawyer. After that, Mari presented evidence about Lee's past. She showed everyone that Lee was a high school dropout. She also shared some opinions of Lee's friends about Lee. One of those opinions stated that Lee had been known as a thief back then. Mari wanted to show the jury that Lee hadn't changed since then. Lee was depressed because of that. He regretted what he did in the past. He had promised that he would change into a better person, but it seemed useless because people kept judging him based on his past. He was sad because people believed the drunken man more than they believed him. Suddenly, Ji-hoon received a message from Lee's wife. Lee's wife told him that So-mi had just passed out and was rushed to the hospital for surgery. Then, the trial continued. Ji-hoon told the jury that he wanted to provide new evidence, but Mari objected to his idea when she heard it. She said that it was against the rules because the evidence that would be presented during the trial should be approved by both parties before the trial began. But Ji-hoon asked the prosecutor to look at the evidence first. He opened the pink box he carried before and showed it to Mari. Mari was surprised when she saw that, but then she approved Ji-hoon's request to provide it as new evidence. After that, Ji-hoon told everybody that the content of the box would prove that Lee was not guilty. Then, he opened the box and showed it to everyone. Everybody in the courtroom was confused when they saw that the box was empty. They became even more confused when Ji-hoon said that there was no evidence that could prove that Lee was innocent. Then, he asked Mari to prove that Lee was guilty, and as he had expected, Mari didn't have any strong evidence to support her claim. Ji-hoon wanted to show everyone that there was no evidence that proved that Lee was guilty. They only accused Lee of stealing based on his dark past and the statement of a drunken man, and not based on any strong evidence. Mari still disagreed with Ji-hoon. She said that Lee was trying to steal, so that was why they didn't have any strong evidence. Ji-hoon responded to her statement by asking Mari to tell what was Lee's motive in stealing if it was only an attempt of stealing. Mari then mentioned about the apology letter that had been written by Lee. She said it was enough to prove that Lee had committed such crime. But of course Ji-hoon had anticipated this answer. He explained about a law article that said if a defendant made a confession because of being abused, attacked, or threatened, and not because of his pure intention, then the confession was not valid and therefore couldn't be used as evidence. Ji-hoon said that the prosecutor had persuaded the defendant to write that apology letter by promising him that she would reduce his punishment if he was willing to do that. Mari then mentioned about the hospital bills that should be paid by Lee. The amount of money that Lee should pay was 13 million won. She said that with that kind of salary, it was impossible for Lee to pay the hospital bills. Lee lowered his head when he heard that. Mari wanted to show everyone about Lee's situation. She tried to use his situation as his motive in stealing. When it was Ji-hoon's turn to speak, he asked Lee about where he had been stealing and had he been caught in stealing all this time. Everybody was confused when they heard Ji-hoon's questions. They had no idea what was Ji-hoon's intention by asking such questions. But because Lee believed in Ji-hoon, he answered Ji-hoon's questions honestly. He said that he used to steal in some crowded places such as hotel, mall, bank, etc., because those places were the places where rich people usually hanged out. He also said that he had never been caught stealing, and that was how he got his nickname, the Invisible Hands. From those answers, Ji-hoon wanted to show everybody that instead of stealing at the station, Lee would steal in the crowded places if his intention was really to steal, especially to consider Lee's great skill to never get caught. He said that it didn't make sense that a great thief like Lee was caught by a drunken man, but Mari disagreed with him by saying that Lee's right hand was injured that night, so it was easy for Lee to get caught because he was stealing by using his left hand, which was the hand that Lee probably wasn't used to. Then, Ji-hoon asked Lee why his right hand was injured that night. Lee didn't answer him right away. He remembered his promise to his daughter that he would never steal again. He injured his hand in front of his wife to show that he was determined to keep his promise. But Mari protested by saying that Lee's sad story couldn't be used as the evidence. She accused Lee of lying so he could escape his punishment. The judge agreed with Mari. Lee was angry when he heard that. He could no longer hold back his anger. He was sick of people there who kept attacking and looking down on him since the beginning. He thought that it was pointless for them to take a jury trial because they didn't trust him anyway. But Ji-hoon calmed him down immediately. He reminded him about his promise to his daughter. Lee, who was almost kicked out from the courtroom, finally got hold of himself. Before the trial was ended, Ji-hoon asked the drunken man to get up from his chair. He told him to close his eyes and show them how that event took place that night. But right after that drunken man closed his eyes, Ji-hoon already held his wallet. Apparently, Lee was the one who took it without that man's knowledge. Ji-hoon wanted to show everybody that if Lee really wanted to rob that man, he could have done it easily without being caught by him. The drunken man didn't even know that his wallet was stolen even though he was sober, so it was impossible for him to catch Lee stealing when he was really drunk. It meant that Lee's intention that night was to help the drunken man and not robbing him. Everybody was amazed when they heard Ji-hoon's great explanation, including Mari's grandfather, even though he and Ji-hoon had a fight in the past. Because of that, he asked his personal assistant called Young Jun to find out about where Ji-hoon worked right now. At the end of the trial, Ji-hoon explained about the principle of criminal law, which stated that if they had any doubt, they should take side with the defendant. It was important to punish those who had committed crimes, but what was more important was not to punish those who didn't commit any crime. He said that it was better to lose 10 criminals rather than punishing one innocent person. Finally, the judge read the court verdict and the jury agreed with it. They decided that the defendant was not guilty. Lee cried immediately when he heard the decision. He thanked Ji-hoon and the jury who had trusted him. After that, Ji-hoon and Moo Jang told Lee to go to the hospital soon to visit his daughter who was having surgery. Suddenly, Mari approached Ji-hoon and congratulated him. Then, Ji-hoon asked Mari if she planned to make an appeal. If she didn't want to make an appeal, he suggested her to make the final decision soon because Lee was in need of money to pay the hospital bills. Apparently, it was part of Ji-hoon's initial plan to make the state give compensation to Lee because of the false arrest, and after Moo Jang and Ji-hoon counted it, they estimated the amount of money that Lee would receive from the state was slightly more than the amount of money of the hospital bills that he should pay off. Moo Jang was really happy when he found out about that. He thought that he could finally become a hero for Lee's family. Mari was mad at them. She thought that they had tricked her. Because of that, she planned to make an appeal, but suddenly, she remembered that Ji-hoon said that they didn't have strong evidence to prove that Lee was guilty. Then, she realized that Ji-hoon was right. She finally canceled her plan to make an appeal. Meanwhile at the hospital, So-mi had just finished having surgery. Lee and his wife were happy because their daughter could be saved. At another place, Ji-hoon was staring at his 1001. He then put the money in the jar and had a thought about something sad. It was the sad story about why he could finally charge his clients very cheaply. Mari's internship at the office was going to end soon, so she started to pack her things at the office and said goodbye to his colleagues. But suddenly, Yi-jin approached her and gave her the file of the appeal that she had cancelled yesterday. She said that it was the proof that Mari was a good prosecutor because she was willing to admit that she had made mistakes. She also told Mari to keep it as the reminder so Mari could remember the reason why she cancelled her appeal if someday she felt like she lost direction. Time had passed. Mari's mother was preparing everything for her daughter to work at her new office. After Mari had finished her internship at the office of the prosecutor and gained many experiences there, Mari was confident and ready to work as a new lawyer at her grandfather's prestigious law firm. When she arrived at the office, she saw her colleagues were assigned with tasks. Meanwhile, she was only given a piece of paper which contained an address. Turned out, it was the address of a law firm and Mari should take another internship there for 2 months before she could work at her grandfather's law firm. Mari gladly accepted the challenge that her grandfather gave her. When she arrived at that law firm, she was confused and disgusted when she saw that the place was very dirty and messy. Apparently, Moo Jang and Ji-hoon were hiding from the owner of the building. Mari was surprised when she met them there. She then lied to them that she came to the wrong address, but Ji-hoon quickly opened the file that contained Mari's application letter. Mari panicked when Ji-hoon did that. She would be embarrassed if Ji-hoon found out that she wanted to become an intern at his office, so she tried to take her file from Ji-hoon back. But unfortunately this thing happened. Mari finally took her file back with embarrassment. Then, she tried to leave that office immediately, but apparently, she had been tricked by Ji-hoon. It was not her application letter that she had taken. Her real application letter was still being held by Ji-hoon. Ji-hoon read the application letter and mocked Mari's photo on that letter. After Ji-hoon found out that Mari wanted to become an intern there, he scared Mari by telling her that it was really difficult to be accepted as a worker at his office. Mari was mad when she heard that, so she decided to leave that office soon. After that, she came to her grandfather's office and protested her grandfather for telling her to become an intern at that weird person's office. Her grandfather told her that Ji-hoon didn't know that she was going to become an intern there. He told Mari to become an intern there because he knew that Mari would gain many experiences from that place. He had witnessed Ji-hoon's greatness as a lawyer in Lee's trial. He believed that Mari would still lose to Ji-hoon if Ji-hoon were a prosecutor in that trial. Min-hyuk had returned to South Korea. He was picked up by his father at the airport. His father was Young Jun, the personal assistant of Mari's grandfather. Apparently, Min-hyuk returned to South Korea because he wanted to propose to Mari. He had even prepared a proposal ring for her. His father got frustrated when he found out that the proposal ring costed the same as a car. But Min-hyuk explained that he needed to buy that ring if he wanted to be accepted by a woman like Mari. He also said that if he managed to marry Mari, his marriage with Mari would bring many advantages to them, such as inheriting her grandfather's prestigious law firm. He even planned to make that law firm as his own someday. Meanwhile, at another place, Mari was still thinking whether she should take his grandfather's challenge to become that weird man's subordinate. The next day, Ji-hoon arrived at his office. He was confused when he saw that his office was no longer dirty and messy. Apparently, Mari was the one who cleaned that office. She did that because she wanted to be accepted as a worker there. Ji-hoon realized that he had power over Mari now, so he purposely teased Mari until she got mad at him. But suddenly, he faced a problem. The owner of that building came to their office. Mari was confused when Moo Jang and Ji-hoon suddenly disappeared. Mari saw Ji-hoon hiding behind the curtain, so she used this moment to seek revenge. Because of that, Ji-hoon was finally caught by the owner of the building. Fortunately, that old woman didn't come to their office to collect the rent money. She came there to consult about the gambling rules since she has been playing gambling with her friends. Actually, the gambling rules were not regulated by the law, but in order to save himself, Ji-hoon lied about the gambling rules to them. Luckily, Mari helped him and backed him up quickly. Because of that, they managed to be free from the office rent. Despite what Mari had done, Ji-hoon still refused to accept Mari. At an apartment building, a security guard called Kim was suddenly getting scolded by an apartment dweller called Young Bae. Young Bae even ruthlessly told him to carry his stuff as if he was his personal servant. He even blamed that man for the scratch on his car. He kept mistreating and harassing that man by asking him for compensation, stepping on his foot, and yelling at him. The security guard's grandson called Gong-woo saw his grandfather being harassed by Young Bae, but Gong-woo kept trying to smile so his grandfather wouldn't be sad. After he left that place, he came to Ji-hoon's office. He wanted to ask for his help. Gong-woo told Ji-hoon about everything that happened to his grandfather. After that, they came to the apartment building where Gong-woo's grandfather was working. Coincidentally, Young Bae was arriving at the same time with his car. He parked his car recklessly. Ji-hoon recognized him right away and began to act out. He criticized him for parking his car recklessly. He also took picture of Young Bae's car. Young Bae got mad because of that, especially after Ji-hoon threatened to upload the picture on the social media. Apparently, that was part of Ji-hoon's plan. As soon as Young Bae got mad, Ji-hoon introduced himself as Kim's lawyer. He said that he wanted to investigate the harassment that Young Bae did to his client. Young Bae was getting more annoyed when he heard that. He couldn't believe that a security guard like Kim wanted to sue him. Kim panicked when he saw that. He asked Ji-hoon to leave that place immediately, but Gong-woo stopped his grandfather right away. He said that he was sad seeing his grandfather being harassed by Young Bae. Kim realized that the harassment hurt his grandson more than it hurt him. Ji-hoon took his coloring marker and covered the scratch on Young Bae's car with it. Young Bae was angry when he saw that. He said that Ji-hoon's coloring marker wouldn't fix the scratch on his car. Moo Jang and Mari approached Young Bae and asked why he accused Kim of damaging his car. When Young Bae answered that he saw Kim damaging his car with his own eyes, Ji-hoon poked his eyes right away. He kept harassing Kim because he wanted to take revenge on him for harassing Kim all this time. When Young Bae showed everyone how Kim scratched his car, Ji-hoon took a random cart and pushed it hard toward Young Bae and his car. Because of that, the scratch on Young Bae's car vanished immediately, so Young Bae could no longer sue Kim for damaging his car. He could only sue Ji-hoon for hitting his car with a cart. Then, Ji-hoon gave 1,000 won to Mari to hire her as his lawyer. Apparently, it was a test that he gave to Mari in order to be accepted as a worker at his office. Mari began to get frustrated as she was trying to figure out how to defend his crazy boss. She was getting more frustrated because she was only paid with 1,000 won. Moo Jang even had no idea why Ji-hoon charged his client very cheaply. Ji-hoon was the only one who decided the charge since the beginning, but Moo Jang had a feeling that Ji-hoon did this for him because he was Ji-hoon's first client. Mari was getting more annoyed by Ji-hoon because Ji-hoon hadn't come to their office. Apparently, Ji-hoon was busy playing bingo with a prisoner. He was the one who sent that prisoner to the prison when he was still working as a prosecutor. That prisoner was called Mr. Mo. He was a CEO of one of the biggest corporations in South Korea. In order to be released from the prison, Mr. Mo asked Ji-hoon to become his lawyer, but Ji-hoon said that he would keep refusing his request as long as he lost the game to him. He also asked Mr. Mo for an amount of money each time he lost the game. The money that Ji-hoon received from Mr. Mo was being used by him to pay his office rent and his living costs. Ji-hoon was happy with this situation because since Ji-hoon played bingo with Mr. Mo since the first time, he never lost a game to him. At the office, Mari began to do some research about Young Bae. She was surprised when she found out that Young Bae was an executive director and his grandfather's client. Then, Mari called Young Jun and secretly asked him for Young Bae's file, but Young Jun told everything to Mari's grandfather. Because of that, Mari failed to get Young Bae's file. At the office, Ji-hoon began to tease Mari again. He kept criticizing Mari for what she was doing. At another place, Min-hyuk was meeting with Mari's grandfather. He smiled all the time during their meeting because his father kept praising him for his achievements. His father did that because he wanted Mari's grandfather to like his son and then allow him to marry Mari. But Mari's grandfather wasn't impressed by Min-hyuk. He told Min-hyuk to make a good career instead. Min-hyuk was confused when he heard that, especially after he found out that Mari was still working as an intern at another law firm. At night, Mari was still busy trying to find solution for this case. She got frustrated and got more frustrated when she saw Ji-hoon playing a game on his phone and smiling like a dumb person. She couldn't hold back her anger anymore when Ji-hoon criticized her while she was doing a presentation. She was sick of being harassed by Ji-hoon, so she decided to quit immediately that night. Outside of the office, Moo Jang told Mari about a little story of Ji-hoon. He said that even though Ji-hoon seemed like an annoying and crazy person from the outside, he believed that Ji-hoon actually meant well. He also bragged that Ji-hoon had never failed handling any case. He told Mari that he once asked why Ji-hoon always behaved like a crazy person. Moo Jang remembered that one time, he was leading a labor strike, but unluckily, that protest ended in chaos. Moo Jang was almost badly injured because of it, but fortunately, Ji-hoon came out of nowhere and protected him. He didn't even care that his head was bleeding from protecting Moo Jang. Ji-hoon explained that as a lawyer, he had to do their best to defend his client, Mu Jiang was amazed by his determination. That was why he was always staying by his side since then. He didn't care that he had to suffer because of his low salary. After telling that story, Mu Jiang begged Mari to stay at their office. At home, Mari asked her grandfather about his real purpose to send Mari as an intern to Ji-hun's law firm. Her grandfather said that Ji-hun was a lawyer who was thinking out of the box, and he had never met that kind of lawyer before. He said that if Mari asked Ji-hun what was 1 + 1, the answer might not be 2 for Ji-hun. Then, he asked Mari to think about how she could lose to Ji-hun in Lee's trial. He believed that Mari could gain many experiences from becoming an intern at Ji-hun's law firm. Mu Jiang got frustrated when Ji-hun told him that he also had no idea how to solve their recent case, but Ji-hun said that they didn't need to worry because he believed that Mari was going to take care of this case. At another place, Mari was thinking hard to find a solution for this case. She had no idea that Ji-hun also studied the case all night. Apparently, Ji-hun had found the solution for this case. He had even figured out how he was going to defeat Young Bae, but he refused to tell Mu Jiang and Mari about it because he wanted to see how Mari would handle this case. The next day, Min Hyuk asked Mari to have breakfast with him. He planned to propose to her during that breakfast, but he soon got mad because Mari asked him about Ji-hun. He was annoyed by just remembering Ji-hun's face, let alone finding out that Mari was becoming an intern at his office. Apparently, Min Hyuk used to work with Ji-hun when he was still working as a prosecutor. He asked Mari to stay away from Ji-hun because he thought that Ji-hun was an annoying troublemaker, but Mari couldn't do that because she had promised her grandfather. At the office, Ji-hun and Mu Jiang were hiding again. Ji-hun was confused when he saw his landlady hanging out at his office, but he soon felt relieved when he found out that Mari had taken care of her. After that, he gave the 1,001 back to Mari as a symbol that he still hired Mari as his lawyer. Suddenly, the client whom Ji-hun had been waiting for finally arrived at the office. Ji-hun greeted him right away, but before he did that, he teased Mari as usual. Ji-hun's client was a man called Taegon. He was working as a personal driver for his boss. He came there because he had a problem with his boss. His boss had been mistreating and harassing him all this time. He always took his anger out on him when he was angry. After Mari heard that story, she told Taegon that he could sue his boss for the harassment that he had done to him, but it seemed like Taegon wasn't interested in doing that. Ji-hun then realized about what Taegon really wanted. He quickly explained the case to Mari, who always failed to see any problem comprehensively. He said that if Taegon sued his boss would only receive fine and probation as his punishment. That kind of punishment wouldn't bring any deterrent effect to a person like Taegon's boss. In the contrary, Taegon was the one who was going to be in trouble for suing his boss. He would get fired and lose his job. Like what Ji-hun thought, Taegon wanted his boss to stop harassing him, but he also wanted to keep working as his personal driver at the same time. Fortunately, he came to the right place. Ji-hun was the person he needed because he was really good in handling such case. Mari studied Taegon's file and called Ji-hun right away. They were surprised when they found out that Taegon's boss was Young Bae. Mari refused to deal with him. She was already frustrated in handling his first case, so she wouldn't want to handle his another case. But Ji-hun told Mari to keep working on his case because he was the one who was going to handle Taegon's case. Mari finally gave up to find the proper solution for this case. She planned to make peace with Young Bae. Then, Mari did some research about Young Bae again. Based on her research, she found out that Young Bae was really friendly with the graduates of his university. Apparently, Young Bae and Mari attended the same university, but the problem was Mari needed to greet Young Bae with a very friendly gesture in order to be his friend. At first, Mari refused to do such silly thing, but she forced herself to do it because she wanted to end her internship at Ji-hun's office soon. She finally came to Young Bae's office to meet with him even though she was annoyed by just seeing his face. She tried to calm herself down and greeted Young Bae with the very friendly gesture that she had been taught before, but no matter how hard she tried, she was unable to do it well. Suddenly, the crazy Ji-hun came to that place too. Mari was surprised when she saw him there. She hid her face immediately. She was afraid if Ji-hun caught her there and found out about her plan to make peace with Young Bae. Unfortunately, Mari's plan was ruined right away because Ji-hun suddenly scolded and provoked Young Bae. Ji-hun mocked Young Bae because Young Bae could only harass an old and weak man like Kim. It was Ji-hun's plan to provoke Young Bae, and it worked because Young Bae got angry immediately. Young Bae finally admitted that it was not Kim who damaged his car. He only said Kim did it because he wanted to have some fun. He also said that he wouldn't let Ji-hun go this time because Ji-hun had damaged his car. When Mari heard that, she got mad and snapped at him right away. Mari finally refused to give up because she suddenly remembered about Ji-hun's principle, which was that a lawyer needed to do their best to defend their client. This time, Mari's objective in handling the case was not to be accepted as a worker at Ji-hun's office anymore. Mari was willing to take care of this case because she realized that she was a lawyer. She also began to learn on how to see the cases she was handling in a more comprehensive way. Kim told Mari that the way people treated the security guard at that apartment building made everyone refuse to become the security guard there. That was why an old man like him could get his job and work as a security guard there. Kim said that it was because of Young Bae too that he could earn money to support his grandchildren. Because of that, Mari had to figure out how to make Young Bae stay at that apartment building and stop harassing Mr. Kim at the same time. She began to slowly understand how Ji-hoon thought. After that, Mari met with Eugene and talked about her case with her. Eugene was laughing when she remembered how Ji-hoon kept messing around when he was still working as a prosecutor back then. Mari said that she couldn't deal with Ji-hoon anymore, but Ji-hoon told her to meet him soon. When Ji-hoon met with Mari, he began to speak seriously. He told Mari that people didn't see lawyer to learn about law, but to ask for help. So, instead of thinking that a lawyer always needed law to function, he suggested Mari to find the most ideal and comfortable way for her to solve the case. Mari gave serious thought to what Ji-hoon had said to her. She even began to admire him secretly, but then, Ji-hoon began to be silly again. Mari quickly regretted herself for admiring him. Not long after that, Ji-hoon played bingo again with Mr. Mo. Because Mr. Mo kept losing the game to him, Ji-hoon told him to live a better and more honest life if he managed to be released from the prison this time. At another place, Young Bae was preparing himself because he was about to attend his boss's trial today. He believed that his boss was going to be released from the prison soon, and after it happened, he would make sure that Ji-hoon would rot in the prison. But as soon as he stepped out of his apartment building, he was chased and surrounded by many reporters. He quickly thought that Kim was behind all of this, but Kim denied his accusation by showing him the news on television. In that news, Moo Jang told everybody that Young Bae was a very good person because he forgave him even though he had damaged his car. After Young Bae saw that news, he pretended to become a good person like how Moo Jang described him in front of the reporters. Apparently, it was part of Mari's plan. Instead of sending Young Bae to jail, she decided to change Young Bae into a totally new person. She planned to invent Young Bae's new personality as a kind-hearted man. She hoped that by doing so Young Bae wouldn't bother to mention about his car damage ever again and stop harassing Mr. Kim. Young Bae was happy when he found out that the news about him was viral and responded positively by many people. He was even thinking about becoming a real good person from now on. But unfortunately, he couldn't change himself overnight. He still screamed at his personal assistant because she forgot to remind him to go to his boss's trial. After that, Young Bae rushed himself to the courtroom, but when he arrived there, the trial had already ended. Young Bae bowed in front of his boss's car immediately to show his regret, but this thing happened. Young Bae was surprised when he saw Ji-hoon came out of his boss's car. Apparently, his boss was Mr. Mo, Ji-hoon's partner in bingo, and Mr. Mo had just been released from the prison by Ji-hoon himself. Back then, Mr. Mo was sent to the prison by Ji-hoon when he was still working as a prosecutor. Mr. Mo was being prisoned because he was responsible for the fatal work accident that happened at his place. And now that Ji-hoon had become a lawyer, it was also him who defended Mr. Mo as his lawyer. Ji-hoon managed to help reducing Mr. Mo's punishment. Because of his help, Mr. Mo was granted with probation. He was trusted by the judge to spend the rest of his life to help other people. In the car, Young Bae kept doing his best to hold back his anger even though Ji-hoon kept teasing and provoking him. As soon as they arrived at the office, Mr. Mo was confused when he saw many employees gathering at the lobby. He became even more confused when Ji-hoon introduced himself as the lawyer of those employees. Young Bae was annoyed when he heard that. It was clear that Ji-hoon was trapping him. Ji-hoon explained that Young Bae needed to make a sincere apology, give proper compensation, and promise that he would stop harassing anyone. And instead of solving their problem by taking legal action, Ji-hoon challenged Mr. Mo to play bingo with him. He said that he would let Young Bae go if he lost the game, but if he won the game, then Mr. Mo should grant what he asked and fire Young Bae from his job. Mr. Mo saw a chance in winning that game, so he agreed to take Ji-hoon's challenge. He thought that it was better than taking any legal action because he knew how great Ji-hoon was as a lawyer. Mari was mad because Ji-hoon risked everything they had on bingo. She knew that they was going to win if they took legal action to solve this problem. But Ji-hoon said that it would take months if they solved this case by taking legal action, and it would bring harm to the employees who worked at that office because they still had to work under Young Bae's leadership. It would also possible for them to get fired from their jobs. After saying that, Ji-hoon managed to convince Mari that he was going to win. The game then finally began. Young Bae selected his boss as the party who was going to announce the numbers. Meanwhile, Ji-hoon selected Mari to do the same job. Mari was confused and surprised when she heard that because she didn't know anything about bingo, she had no idea why Ji-hoon chose her of all people. As the result, after the numbers were announced for several times, Young Bae had more chance to win the game. The employees who heard that began to feel nervous. Luckily, Ji-hoon always found a way to solve his problem. He distracted Young Bae's attention by pretending to give him advice about the harassment that he had done. He was doing that to give Mari a clue. When Mari saw him, she finally realized something. The topic that Ji-hoon talked about was regulated by the law, specifically by Article 76 Paragraph 2 about labor law, so the number that she needed to choose was 2. Because of that, Ji-hoon managed to stop Young Bae from winning the game, but then, Mr. Mo chose the number 6. Ji-hoon was distracting Young Bae's attention again by pretending to give him advice about Young Bae's plan to fire his employees. Mari paid attention to what he was saying and managed to get another clue. The topic that Ji-hoon talked about was regulated by Article 23, so she needed to choose 23. Because of that, Young Bae was stopped once again from winning the game. Then, Mr. Mo chose the number 15. It made Young Bae was close to win the game again. Ji-hoon then said that he wouldn't let Young Bae win this game because of the ethics and professionalism in law. What he was saying reminded Mari of the title of a book at her office. She remembered that Ji-hoon once told him to read the page 108, and because of that, they immediately won the game. Ji-hoon and his team finally managed to solve their case. They celebrated their victory by having a drink together. Mari got drunk because she drank too much. The next day, Mari was confused when she found herself sleeping at the office. She then remembered what happened last night when she was very drunk. She also remembered that Ji-hoon was the one who took care of her because she was drunk. Mari was ashamed when she remembered that. She was feeling more ashamed when she found out that Ji-hoon was sleeping on the floor on some newspapers. Then, she received a call from her mother. Apparently, her mother had been waiting for her outside of the office. She came there with a van which was also a makeup studio. Because of that, Mari managed to clean herself and lie to Ji-hoon that she returned home last night. Ji-hoon was confused when he heard that. He remembered vividly that he was struggling when he took care of that drunken woman last night. But Ji-hoon decided to forget the conversation soon and began to talk about the comic book that he was reading. But then he closed the comic book as soon as he opened the first page. It was because the person who read that comic book had circled the picture of what he thought as the killer. He and Moo Jang didn't want to read the comic book anymore because they were afraid if it was a spoiler. Mari saw that and used that moment to seek revenge on them. But Mari didn't have a heart to give them spoiler, so she drew the same thing on all of the characters' faces. Ji-hoon and Moo Jang were happy because of that, but instead of appreciating Mari's kindness, he teased Mari again by ordering her to do this and that and treating her like his true subordinate. Suddenly, a young woman called Soo-yeon came to their office. She wanted to use Ji-hoon's service, but after Soo-yeon told them that it was a murder case, Ji-hoon and his team were getting nervous and afraid. It was because they had never handled a murder case before, and Ji-hoon and Moo Jang were actually afraid of murder. But Soo-yeon begged them to help her because she couldn't find any lawyer to handle her case. She said that her brother who happened to be the murderer asked Ji-hoon to come to his place. He believed that Ji-hoon would be willing to help him. Ji-hoon and his team thought really hard before they finally decided to check Soo-yeon's file. After they checked the file, they were surprised when they found out that it was actually the famous recent murder case. 2 weeks ago, there was a maid called Jae-suk who was working at a house of a rich man. Jae-suk went to her workplace at 6 a.m. to cook, but when she arrived there, she was confused when she saw a knife was gone from the kitchen. Suddenly, the lights went out. Jae-suk rushed to fix the lights. She immediately sensed that something went wrong in that house, so she went to check the situation. She was shocked and frightened when she saw her boss lying unconsciously on the ground with a severe stab wound. Not long after that, the police came to that house. While they were checking the situation inside of that house, they only caught the victim's own son called Min Jae. Meanwhile, the victim's husband disappeared mysteriously. The police accused Min Jae of murdering his own parents. They still couldn't find the victim's husband and thought that Min Jae was hiding his body somewhere. After Moo Jang and Mari found out about that story, they rejected to help Soo-yeon immediately because it was obvious to them that Min Jae was the killer. They also refused to help Soo-yeon after they read an article and found out that no lawyer wanted to handle this case. Mari was surprised when she found out that one of the lawyers who rejected this case was from his grandfather's law firm, but she soon pretended as if nothing happened because she was afraid if Ji-hoon found out about it. But then Ji-hoon reminded Moo Jang that they owed Min Jae. Back then, Moo Jang and Ji-hoon were punished by the landlady to paint the wall of the office because they hadn't paid their rent, but instead of painting something nice, Ji-hoon painted himself. He thought that his painting was beautiful. Luckily, Min Jae was around that time. He offered himself to help them painting the wall. His painting was really beautiful, and because of that, the landlady freed Moo Jang and Ji-hoon from paying the rent for 1 month. As the return, Ji-hoon and Moo Jang promised that they would help Min Jae if he needed any help. In spite of that, Moo Jang and Mari was still trying to convince Ji-hoon not to handle this case, but Ji-hoon kept convincing them back to help Soo-yeon. He threw a question to them, asked them why a rich man like Min Jae wanted them to help him while he could hire any expensive lawyer from prestigious law firm. Mari wasn't aware that this was a trap. Because of that, Ji-hoon had a reason to bring his team to meet with Min Jae. Min Hyuk finally returned to the office of the prosecutor. On his first day, he was already challenged to solve the same murder case. Actually, Min Hyuk didn't want to come under the spotlight because the case was viral. but then he imagined that if he took this case, he would gain more followers on his Instagram account. He was pleased by his own imagination. Not long after that, Ji-hoon and Mari met with Min Jae. They were confused when they saw that Min Jae was not saddened at all by the death of his parents. Then, Min Jae strangely asked them if he should be sad because his parent died, especially to consider that it was only his mother who died. He believed that his father was the one who killed his mother because their parents always had fights. He also believed that man was hiding somewhere now. He didn't know anything about what happened that night because when the murder took place, he was taking a bath upstairs. Mari asked Min Jae if he also often had fights with his parents, but Min Jae refused to answer. Instead, he said that Mari acted like a prosecutor and not a lawyer. The way she behaved reminded him of the law firm of Mari's grandfather, which was why he fired them as his lawyer in the beginning. He also said that he hired Ji-hoon because he didn't want public to think that he could be released from the prison because of money. Mari was confused when she heard that. She thought that Min Jae wasn't serious in handling his own case. It seemed like Min Jae didn't even care if he was facing a murder case which could send him to prison for the rest of his life if it wasn't handled well. But what made Mari worried more was actually Ji-hoon. She worried if Ji-hoon finally took this case. She was getting more worried when Ji-hoon was heading to her grandfather's office. She tried to tell everyone there not to tell Ji-hoon about who she really was. Ji-hoon came to Mari's grandfather's office to ask them about why they refused to help Min Jae. Young Jun was annoyed by him. He thought that Ji-hoon was so rude because he suddenly came to their office and asked them such a rude question, but because Mari was with him, Young Jun answered that they refused to help Min Jae because they believed that Min Jae's father had died and Min Jae was the one who killed him. He asked if Ji-hoon thought that the real killer was Min Jae's father who was still alive, and Ji-hoon said yes. After that, Mari criticized his answer since Min Jae's father still wasn't found until right now. Ji-hoon didn't respond to her and got distracted by the title of Beck's law firm instead. Young Jun met his son to ask him to handle the murder case of Min Jae. He believed that Min Jae was the killer. If Min Hyuk took and won that case, Min Hyuk would have a good reputation as a lawyer. Young Jun believed that his son was going to win because his opponent was only a random lawyer like Ji-hoon. Min Hyuk agreed to handle the case right away when he found out that his opponent was Min Hyuk. His objective was no longer being famous and having good reputation, but to show Mari about his greatness as a lawyer. Moo Jang got frustrated when he found out that Ji-hoon finally took the case, but Ji-hoon believed that he was going to win this case because he thought that he was as great as Detective Boy who could solve any case. Because of that, Mari did some research about the murder case. Then, she explained her result to them. Based on the information that she had collected, on the 1st of May at 6 in the evening, Min Jae's father, a famous artist called Chun Gil, celebrated his 58th birthday with his wife, an art gallery director called Hai Ju, his 2 children Min Jae and Soo-yeon, a reporter called Jae-yu, a gallery curator called Seo-won, and his maid Jae-suk. So, there were 7 people who were gathering in their house that night. Min Jae seemed having bad mood, so he left the dinner early. According to the maid Jae-suk, Min Jae began to have fights with his parents when his parents forced him to study abroad. That was why Min Jae left his father's birthday party and had a drink with his friends instead, and returned home at 0:50. 15 minutes later, Jae-suk saw Min Jae getting slapped by his mother. Chun Gil was there, but he didn't care about what was happening. He was busy painting instead. The journalist and the gallery curator admitted that they had no idea about what happened that night because they slept at the pavilion, which was located far from the main house. After getting slapped by his mother, Min Jae went straightly to his room. His sister Soo-yeon admitted that she didn't hear the fight between Min Jae and their mother because she was asleep in her room. According to the judiciary, Min Jae killed his father at between 2 until 3 a.m., but they had no idea how he killed him. They believed that Min Jae got rid of his father's body at the mountain. From the CCTV footage, they could see that Min Jae got out of his house at 3:10 a.m. and went through the tunnel that was leading into the mountain. Min Jae admitted that he went to the mountain because he wanted to relieve his stress. Then, he fell asleep in his car. But Mari thought that the judiciary's claim was more convincing since there was no camera in Min Jae's car. She suspected that Min Jae had gotten rid of the camera to hide something. The problem was they hadn't found Chun Gil's body yet, but Mari believed that they were going to discover his body soon. Ji-hoon disagreed with her by saying that Chun Gil was still alive and hiding somewhere. He said that they needed to think that way because they were Min Jae's lawyer. Mari then continued her presentation. She explained that the maid Jae-suk went grocery shopping at 4 a.m. Jae-suk said that everything at home was still alright when she was leaving. At 5 a.m., Min Jae finally returned home. The prosecutor assumed that when Min Jae was in the kitchen, Min Jae's mother asked him where his father was because his father suddenly disappeared. Then, she tried to call her husband but nobody answered. Moo Jang got frightened when he imagined the situation. Mari continued her presentation. At 5:30 a.m., Soo-yeon received an important call from someone and left the house 10 minutes later. She admitted that she didn't see anything unusual at home because the lights went out that time. And then at 6 a.m., the maid Jae-suk returned home and found Min Jae's mother lying unconsciously on the ground. The prosecutor assumed that Min Jae killed his mother at between 5:10 until 5:30 a.m. before Soo-yeon left the house. Min Jae said that as soon as he returned home, he went straightly to his room after he drank a glass of water in the kitchen. Ji-hoon doubted that Min Jae was the killer because he didn't get rid of his mother's body too and took a bath instead. Mari assumed that it was because Min Jae didn't have time to do it because Soo-yeon suddenly left the house and the maid was going to return home soon. When the Min Jae was rushed to the hospital, Soo-yeon, who was also a doctor there, was surprised to see her mother. Soo-yeon tried to save her mother, but she failed to do so. After hearing Min Jae's mother's last words, Moo Jang believed that Min Jae was the killer, but Ji-hoon thought that her last words were very strange. He also wondered about where was the knife that was used to kill the mother. Mari said that when they interrogated Min Jae knew that the killer used the knife to kill the mother. It was suspicious because the prosecutor had never mentioned it to him. Ji-hoon and his team finally came to the hospital to meet Soo-yeon, but they cancelled their plan after they saw that Soo-yeon had lied to them. Soo-yeon said that there was an emergency patient that she needed to look after soon, but turned out she was heading to another place. Ji-hoon and his team decided to follow Soo-yeon. At the restaurant, they had to order expensive food to watch her. They were surprised when they saw Soo-yeon meeting with her maid there. After that, Mari began to believe in Ji-hoon's claim. Ji-hoon came to the office and asked his team to visit the crime scene. Moo Jang and Mari cringed when they saw Ji-hoon pretending to be a cool detective, but when they arrived at the crime scene, it was Ji-hoon who got frightened the most. But still, Ji-hoon kept pretending to be cool. Ji-hoon got more frightened when he found out that the lights went out. He tried to find any reason to ask his team to return home, but Mari refused to leave soon because they had come this far. So, instead of embarrassing himself, Ji-hoon forced himself to check that place. He didn't care if he couldn't breathe normally because he was really afraid. Then, he planned to go to Soo-yeon's room to check if he couldn't hear anything from there, but instead of going to that room by himself, he ordered Mari to do it alone. After that, Moo Jang and Ji-hoon began to make some noise, but there was no answer from Mari. It meant that Soo-yeon was right when she said that she couldn't hear anything from her room. Suddenly, Ji-hoon and Mari saw something strange there. They thought that there was somebody who was using a flashlight outside. Mari got out of the house to look for that person. She found him and followed him secretly, but suddenly, Mari stepped on a branch. The person turned his back immediately. He also brought a knife with him. Mari hid herself quickly, but that person saw her shoulder and walked toward her. Suddenly, Ji-hoon came out of nowhere and calmed Mari down. He came out of the hiding place and walked toward that person. Then, he grabbed that man's shoulder. Turned out, that man was Min Hyuk. He was eating some ice cream there. Min Hyuk said that he came there to check the place because he was the prosecutor. Ji-hoon and Moo Jang were confused when they saw Mari and Min Hyuk knew each other. Mari then told them that she and Min Hyuk were childhood friends. Min Hyuk planned to tell Mari about his past with Ji-hoon, but he cancelled his plan after he saw Ji-hoon glaring at him. He was really annoyed by Ji-hoon because of it. Then, they decided to check the crime scene once again. Ji-hoon pulled Mari closer to him and asked her quietly to keep an eye on Min Hyuk. Min Hyuk didn't like what he saw. He thought that Ji-hoon was flirting with Mari. He had no idea that Mari was really frustrated by Ji-hoon. Mari and Min Hyuk finally went upstairs. Min Hyuk told Mari that when he was still working as a prosecutor with Ji-hoon back then, he always taught everything to Ji-hoon. Ji-hoon and Moo Jang went downstairs. They tried to imagine how Chun-gil made his escape there if Chun-gil was the killer. After they finished checking the crime scene, they finally returned home. But not long after that, Ji-hoon came back to the crime scene. He was serious this time. There was something that he found odd there, but he didn't want Min Hyuk to know about it. The next day, after Yi-jin took her child to school, she was confused when she saw Min Hyuk was being serious in solving Min Jae's murder case. She remembered that Min Hyuk was still hesitant to handle the case yesterday. Min Hyuk decided that he needed to take this case after he saw that the crazy annoying Ji-hoon was flirting with his crush. But of course he needed to show that he was serious and professional in front of Yi-jin and the others. He began to make speculations about this case. He assumed that Min Jae murdered his father at a different place. Yi-jin began to wonder why a person like Ji-hoon wanted to defend a murderer like Min Jae. At another place, Moo Jang was surprised when he found out that Chun-gil's painting was sold for 600 million won. It was equivalent to $400,000. But it seemed like Ji-hoon had realized that there was something strange about Chun-gil's painting. He noticed that Chun-gil always painted a man with a black umbrella on his paintings. At the office of the prosecutor, Yi-jin showed the last painting that Chun-gil made that night. She said that they needed to return that painting soon because it would be auctioned off soon. Ji-hoon received a message from Mari. It was a video of Soo-yeon when she was meeting with her maid at the restaurant. But since Mari took their video from afar, they couldn't hear anything about their conversation. Because of that, Ji-hoon had to interpret what they said by studying their mouth movements. Moo Jang was amazed by him when he saw that. Mari arrived at the office. Ji-hoon wanted to show off his great skill to Mari, but Mari stopped him immediately after she had only seen one word that he had interpreted. Mari was annoyed by Ji-hoon's silly interpretation. but fortunately, she had visited a lip reader. From that lip reader, she found out that during their conversation, Jae-suk asked Soo-yeon for more money because she thought that her salary was too low and that she deserved to be paid with higher salary. If Soo-yeon refused to give her money, she threatened that she would tell the police about everything she knew. But unfortunately, when she was revealing about what she knew to Soo-yeon, the waitress came and blocked her that Ji-hoon and his team couldn't see what she was saying. They were annoyed because of that. Moo Jang and Mari suggested them to meet Jae-suk, but Ji-hoon thought that it wasn't a good idea because there was no way Jae-suk would tell everything to them, but he said that they could still meet and ask Soo-yeon. At the prison, Soo-yeon seemed anxious when she told Min-jae about what Jae-suk wanted from her. She also told him that Jae-suk knew where their father was. Min-jae told his sister not to worry because he believed that Jae-suk wouldn't dare to say anything about their secret. When Min-jae returned to his room, he looked at his hands. He had a flashback about the incident that happened that time. He remembered how he held a knife in front of his mother who was lying unconsciously on the ground, and how he cleaned his hands from the blood and burned his clothes to get rid of the evidence after that. At another place, Soo-yeon was still anxious because of Jae-suk. She was getting more anxious when she was meeting with Ji-hoon and Mari. Mari asked why Soo-yeon wanted to meet Jae-suk that night and what Jae-suk had said to Soo-yeon that time. But while she was interrogating Soo-yeon, Ji-hoon kept interrupting her. Mari was annoyed and confused with him. She had no idea why Ji-hoon kept behaving like that. She was getting more confused when Ji-hoon asked Soo-yeon about their family tree. Soo-yeon answered that Min-jae was actually his stepbrother. His mother remarried with Min-jae's father. She believed that Min-jae didn't kill their parents because she knew that Min-jae was a soft-hearted person who wouldn't even dare to kill an insect. So, she believed that it was Min-jae's father who killed her mother, especially because their parents had fights a lot that Soo-yeon and Min-jae even wished that they got divorced. Then, Mari asked Soo-yeon about her mother's last words. Soo-yeon didn't say anything for a second. She had a flashback about the time when her mother was dying and saying those words to her, but she said that she had no idea what her mother tried to say. Then, she proceeded to ask Ji-hoon to help her to prove that her brother was not guilty. While Ji-hoon and Mari were leaving that place, Ji-hoon suddenly asked Mari to bring a single witness who was present when the murder took place. Mari was confused because she had no idea about the single witness whom Ji-hoon meant, but when she asked Ji-hoon about it, Ji-hoon told her to think instead. While they were heading to the exit of the building, Soo-yeon was staring coldly at their backs. In the car, Mari was still confused about Min-jae and Soo-yeon's statements. She thought that they were really suspicious, but Ji-hoon seemed unbothered and kept guiding Mari to drive to the art gallery by using the GPS. They planned to meet the single witness there. Apparently, Ji-hoon thought that the single witness in that murder case was Chun-gil's last painting. Mari got more frustrated when she heard his opinion. It was impossible for an inanimate object like a painting to become a witness in the law case. She thought that Ji-hoon began to lose his mind. When they arrived at the art gallery, the gallery curator Seo-won told them that Chun-gil's last painting had been sent away and would be auctioned off the next day. Suddenly, Ji-hoon asked her about how Chun-gil met with Min-jae's mother. Seo-won then told them about their story. Back then, Min-jae's mother was looking for a talented artist. She came to an art gallery and saw Chun-gil's paintings. She fell in love immediately with those paintings, so she offered a partnership to Chun-gil and began to promote his paintings. Because of that partnership, they finally decided to get married. The problem was, Ji-hoon and Mari couldn't get Chun-gil's last painting if they didn't buy it in the next day's auction. They got frustrated when they thought about the price of the painting, which might be really expensive. After they left that art gallery, Seo-won called the reporter Jae-yu right away. She told him about Ji-hoon and Mari's visit there. They sounded nervous when they were having that conversation. It seemed like they were hiding something. Jae-yu was surprised and getting more nervous when he saw Ji-hoon and Mari suddenly walking toward him. Ji-hoon visited him because he wanted to ask him a few questions about Chun-gil. Jae-yu then told Ji-hoon that Chun-gil was really great at painting. He knew him as a hardworking artist. He said that Chun-gil and Min-jae's mother moved to their recent house 3 years ago. They bought that house because Chun-gil loved the lake near it. He even painted the lake in the last painting that he made that night. When Ji-hoon asked Jae-yu when he saw that last painting of Chun-gil, the look of Jae-yu's face suddenly changed. He had a flashback about the incident that happened that time. He remembered that the first thing that he and Seo-won were worrying about that time was Chun-gil's last painting. They were surprised when they found and saw the painting. It seemed like there was something wrong with that painting. While Ji-hoon and Mari were leaving that place, Mari seemed frustrated because all people that she and Ji-hoon had interrogated sounded suspicious. Ji-hoon seemed unbothered with those people. He was thinking about something else instead. He was thinking about something that he saw on the night he returned to Min-jae's house alone. He tried to find a way to see that painting. He believed that the painting could be the answer of this murder case. Ji-hoon got excited when he arrived at their office. It was because he saw some reporters of his favorite show gathering there. He had been dreaming of making an appearance in that show. That show was a reality show about mysteries and murders. While Ji-hoon was busy with his narcissism, Mari tried to find a way to get the painting. She suddenly had an idea. She called her mother and pretended that she asked for a birthday present. Her mother agreed to buy her Chun-gil's last painting for her birthday present. She didn't care if the price of that painting was really expensive. She was willing to buy Mari that painting because she rarely asked her to buy anything. Even though Ji-hoon seemed excited and brave to appear in his favorite show, he was actually nervous when he appeared in front of the camera. But after the shooting had finished and the crew had left that office, Ji-hoon began to pretend to be cool again. He didn't want Mari to know that he was actually nervous. In the evening, Mari and her mother went to the auction. They paid 1 billion won for Chun-gil's last painting. They believed that they were going to get that painting. But suddenly, someone bid 2 billion won for the painting. Mari's mother wanted to bid higher, but Mari stopped her right away. She didn't want to spend that much money for a painting just because of Ji-hoon. At another place, Min-hyuk was investigating some CCTV footages. He found something strange about Min-jae's statement. Min-jae said that he saw his father walking beside of the house on the night when the murder happened. Min-hyuk smiled because he thought that he had solved the case. Ji-hoon began to see the weak spots in that murder case. Moo Jang got frustrated when he heard his explanation. Suddenly, a courier came to the office to deliver Ji-hoon's package. Ji-hoon checked the package and said that they had solved the case. Then, he told Moo Jang and Mari about his discovery that night. The painting's trail was similar with the trail that he saw in Min-jae's house that night. It meant that there was a painting that had been displayed on that wall for a long time, but that painting was gone. After Ji-hoon checked the size of the painting, he found out that it shared the same size with Chun-gil's last painting. Apparently, the package he received was a document from an art expert. That document contained the result of the research about that painting. It was said that there was a 3-year interval between the painting of the lake and the man with the black umbrella. It meant that the lake was painted 3 years ago. Meanwhile, the man with the black umbrella was painted recently. Ji-hoon thought that it was strange because that night was the last time Chun-gil painted. Ji-hoon then assumed that something had happened to the real painting, and that was why someone replaced it with the old painting. After that, that person painted the man with the black umbrella in that old painting. When Moo Jang and Mari heard that, they realized that the person who did this was Chun-gil. There was only Chun-gil who could paint the same man with the black umbrella. At another place, Min-hyuk was excited to interrogate Min-jae. He was confident that he was going to solve this case. He showed a CCTV footage to Min-jae. That footage showed that the light of the lamp post beside the house went out that night. It meant that Min-jae lied when he said that he saw his father walking beside the house and going into the woods. Ji-hoon asked Mari to visit the woods near Min-jae's house. He came there to look for Chun-gil. He believed that Chun-gil was still alive. Min-jae seemed nervous when Min-hyuk knew that he lied. But suddenly, he asked Min-hyuk to do something for him. He promised that he would tell the truth to Min-hyuk if Min-hyuk did that. Because of that, Min-hyuk was willing to do what Min-jae asked him. Apparently, Min-jae asked Min-hyuk to play him some music. It was the music that he was listening to when he was taking a bath that night. While he was listening to that music, he remembered his parents who always had fights. He also remembered his sister's face when she was crying. His sister cried all the time, and that made him sad and cry too. Everything was too painful for him. Ji-hoon and Mari finally arrived at the lake near Min-jae's house. When Ji-hoon checked that place, he noticed something strange there. After a while, Min-hyuk stopped the music. He asked Min-jae about his promise. Min-hyuk was surprised when Min-hyuk confessed that he killed his mother. After that, he gave the recording of Min-hyuk's confession to Yi-jin, but Yi-jin was skeptical with Min-hyuk's confession. She thought that it was strange that Min-jae suddenly confessed like that. They hadn't even found the murder weapon yet. Ji-hoon was comparing the old pictures of the lake with the recent picture of the lake that he had taken. There was some differences about the lake in the past and in the present time. After hearing about Min-jae's confession, Jae-yu, Seo-won, and Jae-suk returned to Min-jae's house. They came there to look for Chun-gil's painting that was kept upstairs. But suddenly, Ji-hoon appeared in front of Jae-suk. Jae-suk was surprised and nervous when she saw him there. She was getting more nervous when Ji-hoon asked her about Chun-gil's whereabouts. After that, Ji-hoon visited Min-jae in the prison. He asked him why he changed Chun-gil's last painting. Ji-hoon believed that Min-jae was the one who painted the man with the black umbrella. And Ji-hoon was right. That night, Min-jae painted the man with the black umbrella while crying. He did that to hide something that needed to be hidden. After being confronted by Ji-hoon, Min-jae had a flashback about that night. Apparently, Min-jae's father wasn't present when he threw the birthday party for him. Min-jae was also getting slapped by his mother because he refused to study abroad. Min-jae's mother was mad because it was a part of Min-jae's mother and father's partnership. After getting slapped by his mother, Min-jae looked at the studio and cried. Apparently, his father was never there since the beginning. Ji-hoon knew that Min-jae didn't have father after he confirmed his theory with Jae-suk. He planned to reveal everything in the trial. Min-jae was scared because Ji-hoon found out about his big secret. He couldn't believe that the lawyer whom he hired to defend him was going to ruin his plan. Ji-hoon returned to his office. Moo Jang and Mari had been waiting for him there. There had been many news about Min Jae's confession on TV. This confession meant much for Ji-hoon and his team. It meant that they couldn't defend him anymore. But Ji-hoon seemed unbothered by those news. It looked like he had prepared everything. At another place, the judiciary finally found Chun-gil's dead body. They found the body at the location where Min Jae told them. Yi-jin was skeptical because this case was solved too easily. She thought that there was still a truth that hadn't been revealed. Moo Jang and Mari were still confused. They wondered why all witnesses they had interrogated didn't say anything about Chun-gil's death. They also wondered when Min Jae began to fake his father's paintings. Ji-hoon found out the answers since he saw the last painting. He knew that those people kept Chun-gil's death as a secret because the prices of his paintings were very expensive. But the thing was, Chun-gil never painted those paintings since the beginning. All of his paintings were painted by Min Jae. Moo Jang and Mari were surprised when they found out about that. Then, Ji-hoon told them about Min Jae's big mistake. Back then, Min Jae's father was only a poor and ordinary artist, but in spite of that, Min Jae and his father lived happily together. They shared the same passion for painting. One day, an art gallery director Haiju came to an art gallery. She was astonished at a painting there. Actually, the painting was painted by Min Jae and not Min Jae's father. But in order to save his father's face, Min Jae lied to Haiju that the painting was painted by his father. That lie finally led them to this whole tragic incident. After Min Jae's father got married with Haiju under a marriage contract, Haiju finally found out about the truth. Min Jae had to pay for his lie by spending most of his time to replace his father to paint. Chun-gil felt really guilty because of that. It was hurt for him to watch his son suffer because of him, so he finally decided to take his own life. Min Jae was shocked when he found his father lying dead in the bathtub. He couldn't stop crying because of his father's death. He couldn't believe that he had to lose his father because of the lie he made. It was such an irony because the reason why he lied was to make his father's dream come true. Because Chun-gil had died years ago, it meant that Min Jae was the one who killed Haiju. This left Ji-hoon and his team with only two options. The first option was to keep defending Min Jae and get his punishment reduced, and the second option was to resign as their lawyer. Something inside of Ji-hoon somehow told him to choose the first option. Ji-hoon and Moo Jang were thinking about Min Jae's murder case, which had become more complicated. Suddenly, Mari came to their office and brought some food. She asked them to eat those food together and watch Ji-hoon's awkward appearance in the mystery show. When Mari offered him some food, Ji-hoon refused it right away, but then he joined them and pretended that he only tasted the food. Mari was annoyed by him because it was obvious that he was eating those food, but she wasn't annoyed anymore when she saw Ji-hoon's awkward appearance on TV. Suddenly, the host showed a letter that was sent by Min Jae secretly. Apparently, that letter was a clue about the place where Min Jae hid the murder weapon. Mari and the others were surprised when they saw that. Min Jae ended that letter by writing that he killed his mother and would be responsible for his crime. The judiciary finally found the murder weapon. Min Hyuk was really happy when he saw it. He was glad that they solved this case easily, but Yi-jin was still being skeptical as usual. She thought that there was something wrong with this whole case. Min Jae was brought to the crime scene for the crime scene reenactment. He saw Mari and thanked her for becoming his lawyer all this time. Then, Mari felt stressed because Ji-hoon hadn't arrived yet. She didn't want them to miss the reenactment because it was really important for them. When Min Jae was about to begin to do the crime scene reenactment, he was surprised to see the painting that was hanged on the wall. Min Hyuk and the others were also surprised to see it. Suddenly, Ji-hoon came to that room. He confidently told everyone that the painting was the only witness in that murder case. He said that the lake was painted by Chun-gil, meanwhile the man with the black umbrella was painted by Min Jae. Everybody there was confused when they heard that. Then, he explained about what really happened that night. The real painting was supposed to be present in the crime scene, but turned out that painting had been damaged by someone. Who damaged that painting and why that person did that still remained a mystery. Min Jae admitted that he was the one who damaged that painting. He did that because he was sick and tired of replacing his father to paint. But after Ji-hoon asked him something, Min Jae got scared. Ji-hoon continued to say that Min Jae's mother was with somebody that night, and that person was Soo-yeon. Apparently, Soo-yeon was also sick and tired of seeing his brother suffer. That was why she damaged the painting that night. But Soo-yeon's mother suddenly stopped her. They got into a fight and Soo-yeon accidentally stabbed her mother with a knife. Soo-yeon had admitted everything to Ji-hoon. She also came to that room and called Min Jae. That night, Soo-yeon got frightened because she accidentally stabbed her mother. Min Jae saw her when he returned home. He tried to calm Soo-yeon down immediately. He suggested that they blame their father for the death of their mother. Soo-yeon agreed to lie that it was her father who killed her mother, but Min Jae knew since the beginning that it was wrong and impossible to accuse his late father of killing his mother. So, after he managed to convince and calm Soo-yeon down, he decided to sacrifice himself by framing himself as the murderer. Soo-yeon didn't know anything about this. After that, Min Jae got rid of the real painting that was there when the accident took place. He did that because there was Soo-yeon's blood on that painting. He replaced the painting with the old painting that was made by his father 3 years ago. Then, he added the painting of the man with the black umbrella, which was the signature of his father's paintings. Min Jae went berserk when he heard Ji-hoon's explanation. He denied everything that Ji-hoon had said about him. Soo-yeon approached him and told him to stop. Then, Ji-hoon told Min Jae to stop making the same mistake, like how he lied to help his father but it ended up making his father suffer. He asked him if he wanted to make Soo-yeon have the same suffering, and Min Jae suddenly fell down and cried. He still couldn't stop crying when Soo-yeon hugged him, and that was how their tragic story and this murder case finally ended. While Ji-hoon and Mari were leaving that place, Mari asked Ji-hoon about the meaning of Hae-ju's last words. Ji-hoon said that he also had no idea what Hae-ju tried to say, but he thought that Hae-ju was just like any parents in this world. He thought that Hae-ju was trying to protect Soo-yeon even though she was stabbed by her. She didn't care if she had to sacrifice Min Jae. Then, Mari asked Ji-hoon how he could get the last painting. Ji-hoon answered her with a joke instead. It seemed like he was still hiding something. Min Jae visited his sister in the prison. He looked very sad. Soo-yeon asked him to study abroad and keep painting like how he had been dreaming all this time. Before Min Jae left South Korea, Ji-hoon met with him and gave Chun-gil's last painting to him. He wanted him to keep it as a warm memory of his father. Min Jae thanked him and left that place. As Min Jae walked away, Ji-hoon kept staring at his back. He looked at the painting on the wall that was made by Min Jae. The painting was actually Min Jae's childhood dream. His dream was just to become a happy kid. When Min Jae was looking at his father's last painting, he remembered the time when he spent time together with his father near that lake. They promised to live a happy life together as one happy family. At the office, Moo Jang looked unhappy. It was because he didn't get any reward after solving the case of rich people. But suddenly Ji-hoon remembered that there was a reward for them. He then ran out of their office to get that reward. Moo Jang was excited when he heard that. He ran and followed Ji-hoon right away. Mari also ran and followed them, but when they saw their reward, they were surprised to see that the painting had been removed by the landlady. The landlady had no idea that the price of Min Jae's painting was really expensive. For a regular painting, Min Jae could sell his painting for hundreds of millions won. For that painting on the wall, it was estimated that the price was 2 billion won. Moo Jang was depressed when he knew that they had lost 2 billion won. Time had passed. There was only 1 month left for Mari to become an intern at Ji-hoon's office. They weren't busy lately because no client came to their office. Mari was staring at Ji-hoon's desk. Ji-hoon hadn't come to the office lately. Mari had no idea where he had been gone. Ji-hoon was standing in front of a graveyard. It seemed like that graveyard belonged to someone who was very special to him. When Mari put some documents on Ji-hoon's desk, she accidentally saw a picture of a woman there. The picture was originally hidden behind the desk. She was surprised when she found out that the woman in that picture was a great lawyer who used to work at his grandfather's law firm. But sadly, that woman had died long time ago. Mari realized that the picture was taken in front of Ji-hoon's desk. But she was confused because the nameplate was different. That woman took a picture with her nameplate and not Ji-hoon's nameplate. Because she was curious, she asked Yi-jin about her. Yi-jin finally told her about the incident that happened 5 years ago. That time, they were going out together to celebrate the end of their investigation. While they were having a drink, Ji-hoon and Min Hyuk left that place to go to the toilet, but they actually lied because they didn't go to the toilet, but rather continued investigating the case. Min Hyuk visited a corporation called the JQ Group. He came there to search that place. The problem was, after he made a lot of effort to get the warrant, Ji-hoon, who initiated the search, didn't make an appearance. But because Min Hyuk had already gone that far, he decided to search that place without Ji-hoon. The JQ Group, who knew about their arrival, broke the elevator. They did that so their employees still had a chance to get rid of the important documents. Apparently, Ji-hoon had been hiding in that building. He knew that the JQ Group was going to get rid of the evidence. That was why he disguised himself as one of their employees. Min Hyuk finally arrived on the upper floor. He was surprised when he saw Ji-hoon there. Ji-hoon's disguise managed to stop the JQ Group from getting rid of all of the evidence. After that, Ji-hoon went to a room that belonged to one of the JQ Group's executives. That executive was called Ki-tae. But when Ji-hoon arrived there, it was too late for him. The most important evidence he was looking for had been destroyed by Ki-tae. Ki-tae was annoyed by Ji-hoon's audacity to search his corporation. He called Ji-hoon's boss right away to report him. Ji-hoon told Ki-tae to just give up. He also suggested him to hire the most expensive lawyer in South Korea. Then, he answered Ki-tae's call, which was supposed to be a call for his boss. Ki-tae was surprised when he saw that. Apparently, Ji-hoon had anticipated and prepared for everything. Before he went to the JQ Group, he had taken all of his boss's phones. Because of that, Ki-tae couldn't ask Ji-hoon's boss to help him, but Ki-tae refused to give up. He still had a friend who worked as a deputy attorney general. He called that person immediately to ask for his help. But Ji-hoon wasn't afraid at all. He still told his team to take Ki-tae with them. Min Hyuk was scared when he knew that Ki-tae had asked for the deputy attorney general's help. He was confused when he saw Ji-hoon seemed unbothered at all. It seemed like Ji-hoon had prepared for everything. Ji-hoon called his friend who worked as a reporter. That reporter was once fired from his job because of Ji-hoon too. After that, Ji-hoon asked Min-hyuk to go somewhere with him. Ji-hoon's friend was reporting an event of red carpet of a film festival. That event was attended by many famous South Korean actors and actresses. While she was busy working, Ji-hoon kept calling her. At first, she was mad at Ji-hoon, but after she saw Ji-hoon there and heard that Ji-hoon promised to get her back working in the local news department, she didn't know what she had to say. After that, Ji-hoon waved his hand in front of many reporters there. Min-hyuk had no idea about what was happening, but he waved his hand too. He acted like he was a famous actor. The reporters who saw them quickly took their pictures. A few days later, their picture was featured on the main page of the famous newspaper. Ki-tae couldn't do anything about it. Ji-hoon's boss was mad at Ji-hoon when he saw the picture on that newspaper, but he couldn't do anything about it. Ji-hoon defended himself by saying that he had no idea that it was an event of red carpet. Ji-hoon also said that Min-hyuk was the one who had the warrant, so he had no idea about the search of the JQ group. He was just following Min-hyuk and doing his job. Ji-hoon's boss couldn't do anything when he heard that. It was because Min-hyuk's father was his senior there. He was the attorney general himself. Then, Yi-jin asked Ji-hoon about his next plan. She believed that Ki-tae was going to hire a great and expensive lawyer to defend himself. But Ji-hoon didn't care about that at all. When the first trial was about to begin, Ji-hoon went to the restroom. At the restroom, he met a woman there. That woman admitted that she admired Ji-hoon for his bravery and greatness. She thanked him for getting Ki-tae in trouble. Ji-hoon was confused because that woman used the restroom for men. It meant that the woman purposely went there to meet him. In the courtroom, Min-hyuk was terrified when he saw that Ki-tae's lawyer was from Beck's law firm. Beck's law firm was the workplace of his father. Ji-hoon seemed unbothered as usual. He saw the woman who talked to him in the restroom. Apparently, that woman was one of Ki-tae's lawyers. She was called Ju-young. After the trial ended, Ji-hoon called and approached her. He asked if she was playing with him. Ju-young asked him to go to a cafe with her. At the cafe, Ju-young said that she meant everything that she said to Ji-hoon in the restroom. She really wanted a bad man like Ki-tae to go to jail. Unfortunately, as a lawyer, she had to be professional. She had to defend his client even though his client was a bad man. She also said that it would be really difficult for Ji-hoon to face her in the courtroom, so she asked Ji-hoon to do his best to defeat her in the courtroom. That meeting was the beginning of the relationship between Ju-young and Ji-hoon. They agreed that if one of them lost that case, then they had to treat the winner. At an abandoned warehouse, a financial manager of the JQ group called Sang-gu was planning to take his own life. But before he took his own life, he looked at the picture of his family on the phone while crying. Then, he talked to someone on the phone. He told that person to keep his promise once he took his own life. Beck's law firm began to get in trouble because of Ji-hoon's lawsuit against their client. Because of that, Mr. Beck started to get curious about Ji-hoon. Ju-young then told him about Ji-hoon's background. Based on the information in Ji-hoon's CV, it could be seen that Ji-hoon used to live in Paris with his mother when he was in senior high school. After his mother passed away, he returned to South Korea even though he didn't have any relative there. He was also known as a stubborn and highly persistent prosecutor. Because of that, their bosses often gave up when they had to deal with them. To win this case and save their client Ki-tae, there was only one way for Beck's law firm. They needed to blame Sang-gu for embezzling the company's money and running away with it. Meanwhile, Ju-young was getting more amazed by Ji-hoon. She thought that Ji-hoon was a great and honest prosecutor. Min-hyuk's father asked for help from his friend who was working at the judiciary. His friend was Ji-hoon's boss. He asked that they only did investigation report for Ki-tae's case, so his client Ki-tae didn't have to attend the trial. But Ji-hoon rejected Min-hyuk's father's request right away. His boss was angry because of his decision. He still tried to persuade Ji-hoon to do that by saying that Sang-gu, who happened to be the main suspect in this case, had been gone. But Ji-hoon didn't care about that fact. Because of that, his boss took his anger out on Yi-jin. He scolded Yi-jin and said that she had failed to take care of her junior. At another place, Ji-hoon met with Sang-gu's wife. Sang-gu's wife told him that she received a voice note right before Sang-gu disappeared. Because of Yi-jin, Ji-hoon finally managed to interrogate Ki-tae by himself, but Yi-jin said that he could only interrogate him once. Ju-young helped Ki-tae to prepare himself before the interrogation began. She told him to think carefully before he answered any question from Ji-hoon. While Ji-hoon was interrogating him, Ki-tae answered that it wasn't him who was responsible for the slush fund. He said that he had no idea about what his subordinate Sang-gu did. He accused Sang-gu of embezzling the company's money and told Ji-hoon to find and interrogate Sang-gu instead. Ji-hoon's plan to get a reaction out of Ki-tae worked. After Ji-hoon asked why Ki-tae killed Sang-gu, Ki-tae was unable to think carefully before he answered Ji-hoon's questions, especially when he was asked about Sang-gu's last phone call. Ki-tae said that Sang-gu apologized to him in that last phone call. Then, Ji-hoon showed Sang-gu's wife's bank account to Ki-tae. Based on that bank account, it showed that Sang-goo's wife had just received 500 million won from Ki-tae. Ji-hun found it strange that Ki-tae sent compensation money to Sang-goo's family, especially to consider that Sang-goo had embezzled the company's money. Ju-young smiled when she saw what Ji-hun was doing. She admired Ji-hun for his greatness in trapping Ki-tae and finding out about what really happened. When Ji-hun asked Ki-tae if he was the person who ordered Sang-goo to take his own life, Ki-tae was shocked. He suddenly had a flashback about that time. That time, Sang-goo offered himself to be blamed for the crime that the company had committed. Ki-tae accepted his offer right away and told him to hang himself. As the return, he promised that he would take care of Sang-goo's family. Sang-goo was shocked when he heard Ki-tae told him to kill himself. When he offered himself to be blamed for the crime that the company had committed, he only planned to go to jail and not to die, but Ki-tae forced him to take his own life, so he finally agreed to take his own life. Ki-tae was scared because Ji-hun's accusation was true. He finally confessed everything he had done to Ju-young. Ju-young was mad when she heard that. She asked why Ki-tae just told her now. Ki-tae wondered how Ji-hun could find out about the truth, and suddenly, a recording was played by Ji-hun. It was the recording of Ki-tae's voice when he told Sang-goo to kill himself that time. Ki-tae was getting more scared when he heard that, especially after Ju-young told him that Ki-tae was going to face a severe punishment for his crimes. Apparently, when Sang-goo was about to hang himself that night, Ji-hun suddenly came to that place and stopped him right away. At first, Sang-goo was afraid because he knew what kind of a beast his boss was. He knew that his boss would make him suffer if he didn't kill himself. But Ji-hun promised him that Ki-tae was going to be really happy if he didn't kill himself. Because of that, Sang-goo finally cancelled his plan to take his own life. Because of the evidence of Ki-tae's voice recording, Ki-tae was finally arrested and charged with murder. Ki-tae was really scared and nervous. He asked Ju-young to help him, but Ju-young couldn't do anything anymore to help him. Ki-tae was really happy when he saw Sang-goo entering the building. Sang-goo was confused when he saw that. Turned out, what Ji-hun promised him that night was true. Ji-hun managed to trap Ki-tae and Ki-tae couldn't do anything about it. He finally admitted that he was responsible for the slush fund because he didn't want to be charged with murder. Since Ju-young lost the case to Ji-hun, she kept her promise to treat Ji-hun at a small cafe. Later, we knew that Ji-hun often spent his time in that place. Ju-young and Ji-hun became closer to each other because of that case, but Ji-hun still had no idea that Ju-young had a crush on him that time. Ji-hun continued his investigation about the slush fund of the JQ group. He was curious about who received that slush fund. Ji-hun and Ju-young still often met with each other. Ju-young said that she was happy when she saw Ji-hun smiling. That time, Ji-hun was still a reserved and cold person. He had no life outside of his cold life as a prosecutor. He had no time for a love life and wasn't interested in it. But Ju-young was really interested in him. She told him that if Ji-hun smiled for the third time in front of her, then they both should date each other. Ji-hun didn't say anything when he heard that. He was just staring coldly at her. In the present time, Mari asked Yi-jin about the further love story of Ji-hun and Ju-young. Yi-jin was suspicious of Mari when she heard that. She teased her that she might have a crush on Ji-hun too, but Mari denied her accusation right away. She said that it was impossible for her to fall in love with a crazy like Ji-hun. Yi-jin was relieved when she heard that. She said there was a reason why Mari wasn't allowed to fall in love with Ji-hun. Then, she continued her story. Yi-jin said that Ki-tae had never spoken again since that time. Because of that, Ji-hun came to meet Sang-goo to find out about what happened. He was still investigating about the parties who received the slush fund from the JQ group. Sang-goo then told Ji-hun about the truth. He admitted that he was one of the people who received the slush fund. But the problem was, when he received those money, he had never seen the person who gave him the money there. He was only taking those money from the car trunk, and the car was always changed each time he received the money. But Ji-hun had an idea. Even though Sang-goo had never seen the person who gave him money, that person always saw Sang-goo's face. Because of that, he gathered all suspicious moneylenders in a place. He wanted to see their reaction when they saw Sang-goo's picture. Out of all moneylenders there, only Fire Bear who gave a different reaction. Then, Ji-hun called Fire Bear to his room. He promised that if Fire Bear told him everything that he saw about Sang-goo, he would erase all of his minor criminal records. At first, Fire Bear pretended like he didn't know what Ji-hun was talking about, but when he saw Ji-hun destroying his indictments, he was soon surprised. Apparently, Fire Bear's role in that case was only a driver. One day, he was ordered by Ki-tae to put those money in Black Sedan's trunk, to anticipate something bad that might happen to him in the future. Fire Bear didn't leave immediately after he put the slush fund there. He stayed there to see who was the person who received that money. When the person came, he couldn't see his face clearly, but he managed to see his car license plate. The problem was, he couldn't see the entire car license plate. Because of that, Ji-hun had to search all black sedans which had N3866 as its last series. At another place, a district attorney called Kim Yoon-sub was joining a candidate debate to run for prime minister. In that debate, he bragged that as an ex-attorney, he always told his son to become an honest and fair attorney, who would always stand up for what was right. Yoon-sub was the only prime minister candidate who was known as an honest man. He was always praised by the reporters. When those reporters asked him for some interviews, he politely rejected them. He said that he wanted to spend his time with his family. Apparently, that day was his birthday. His children and grandchildren were gathering together to celebrate his birthday. But even though Yoon-sub looked happy, it seemed like he was a little sad about something. After his children and grandchildren left, it was clear about what made him sad. It was his son Ji-hoon. Something happened to his marriage that he couldn't live together with Ji-hoon. Because of that, he always waited for his son to return home. Unfortunately, he had to keep Ji-hoon's return as a secret. It was because according to the law, Ji-hoon was his illegitimate son. But despite of that, Ji-hoon really respected him and thought of him as a good father. When Yoon-sub invited him to come to the house, Ji-hoon rejected his offer. He said that he had to take care of something soon. The truth was, he was surprised when he saw his father's car license plate. Even though it hadn't been proved that his father was the person he was looking for, somehow he believed that it was really his father. He became unsure about what he was going to do. He didn't know if he had to sue his father for the sake of justice or not. He remembered the time when he graduated from the law school as a prosecutor. He saw his friends attending the graduation ceremony with their parents. Meanwhile, he was only attending the event by himself. His father actually came to that graduation, but they couldn't show that they were father and son to the public. Ji-hoon's father was the person who always taught him to become an honest and fair prosecutor. The next day, Min-hyuk helped Ji-hoon to find the owner of the car license plate they were looking for. After he searched and filtered all of the owners of the cars, he finally found the main suspect. It was their own boss. Yi-jin was surprised when she found out about that. Apparently, she knew about Ji-hoon and his father's secret. She promised Ji-hoon that whatever decision that Ji-hoon was going to make, she would always take his side. If Ji-hoon wanted to stop the investigation to protect his father, she promised that she would pretend as if nothing happened. Ji-hoon spent his days contemplating about his decision. He was still uncertain about what he was going to do. One day, he met with Ju-young again. He asked her a hypothetical question. He asked what she would do if she had to investigate someone who meant much for her. Ju-young answered that she would keep investigating that person because it meant that she respected them. She believed that by doing that, she could lead them down the right path. After Ji-hoon spent many days thinking about his decision, he finally asked his father to meet him at a Jajangmyeon restaurant. With a sad voice, he told his father that when he was a child, each time he missed his absent father who had never come home, his mother would always cook him Jajangmyeon. Because of that, he really hated that food. It reminded him of the days he was missing his father. But since he could see his father now, he wondered how it would feel like to eat Jajangmyeon with the father he always missed. After hearing that sad story, Ji-hoon's father felt guilty. He apologized to Ji-hoon and promised him that he would always be by his side from now on. Ji-hoon didn't know what to say when he heard that. He knew that his father wouldn't be able to keep his promise. Then, he told his father about the case he was handling. His father was surprised when he heard that. Judging by how Ji-hoon behaved that night, he knew that his son had found out about what really happened. Ji-hoon's father came to Ji-hoon's office to meet with him. Ji-hoon was confused when he saw his father there. He suddenly had a flashback about that evening. After Ji-hoon and his father came out of the Jajangmyeon restaurant, his father asked him to let him go just for this time. He said that he needed to do it for the justice. It was impossible for him to stand up for the justice if he wasn't a prime minister. But Ji-hoon reminded him of what he had taught him all this time. He decided to lead his father down the right path. When his father heard that, he realized that Ji-hoon was right. Because of that, he came to Ji-hoon's office and asked him about what really happened. Ji-hoon's bosses were mad at Ji-hoon when they found out about that. They couldn't believe that a young prosecutor like Ji-hoon planned to investigate a district attorney like Yoon-sub. But Yoon-sub calmed them down immediately. He said that it was bad to break a young prosecutor's spirit. Since Min-hyuk didn't know that Yoon-sub was Ji-hoon's father, he planned to go with Ji-hoon. He was afraid if something bad happened to him, but Yi-jin stopped him right away. While Ji-hoon was interrogating Yoon-sub, Yoon-sub refused to answer any of his questions. Because of that, Ji-hoon chose another way. He showed a file to his father. He believed that the content of that file would change his father's mind. Ji-hoon's boss began to worry when he saw what Ji-hoon doing. He had received so many calls from the assemblymen who worried that they might get caught, so he decided to blame everything on Yoon-sub. Ji-hoon's boss wasn't aware with an eavesdropping device that had been planted by Ji-hoon there. Apparently, the file that Ji-hoon gave to his father was an earphone. It enabled Ji-hoon's father to listen to what Ji-hoon's boss just said. Ji-hoon wanted to show his father that those people were going to make him end up in jail alone. Those corrupt people wanted money, but they refused to be responsible with how they get the money. It was easier for them to look for a scapegoat if there was a serious problem. Because of that, Yoon-sub promised to give the list of people who had received the JQ Group's slush money. After that, Ji-hoon offered his father a ride to go home, but his father refused his offer. He was afraid if somebody saw them. While he was leaving that building, Yoon Sub smiled when he saw a good article about Ji-hoon. He was proud and happy to see his son become an honest and fair prosecutor. Suddenly, Ji-hoon received a call from his friend. His friend told him that he didn't see Yoon Sub coming out of the building. Ji-hoon was confused when he heard that. It had been a while since his father left the building. Because of that, he came out of the building to look for him. He called his father, but his father didn't answer his call. Suddenly, Ji-hoon was surprised when he heard a loud sound behind him. The phone he was calling also rang there. He walked toward the phone to see what really happened, and when he saw that the person who fell in the car was his father, he cried immediately. He couldn't believe that the person who had taught him everything all this time died horribly like that. He regretted that he hadn't done anything to make him proud and happy. Then, he saw a mysterious number calling his father's phone. He received that call right away. Apparently, before Yoon Sub leaving the office, he received a call from someone. After the talk with that person on the phone, he went to the building rooftop and jumped off that place. The next day, the chief prosecutor announced about Yoon Sub's death. Everybody was surprised when they heard that. Then, Yi Jin and Min Hyuk were looking for Ji-hoon, but they couldn't find them anywhere. Apparently, Ji-hoon hadn't slept at all since last night. He stayed awake all night to find the truth about what really happened. He remembered his father's plan to give him a list of the people who had received the slush money, so he went to his father's house to look for that list. But suddenly, his stepbrother came to the room and stopped him. He blamed him for the death of his father. Ji-hoon couldn't say anything when his brother blamed him. At the office, the chief prosecutor told Min Hyuk and Yi Jin to stop the investigation about Yoon Sub's case. He also told them to keep an eye on Ji-hoon because he might secretly investigate the case by himself. The funeral of Yoon Sub was being held by his family. Ji-hoon watched them from afar. He couldn't join them as a family to mourn his father, but he didn't care about that. He had a better thing to do, that was to look for the people who were responsible for the death of his father. Because they had stopped the investigation for Yoon Sub's case, Ji-hoon had to investigate the case secretly by himself. He managed to find some phone numbers that his father contacted before he killed himself. He saw that there was one suspicious call from a temporary cell phone number. Even though he was handling many cases, he couldn't bring himself to focus on those cases. He was keep thinking about the death of his father. Ju-young realized that Ji-hoon needed someone whom he could talk to. After the trial ended, Ju-young tried to cheer Ji-hoon up, but she failed to do that. Ju-young was surprised when Ji-hoon told her that Yoon Sub was his father. She realized that the hypothetical question that Ji-hoon asked him yesterday was about his father. Ji-hoon kept investigating his father's case by himself. Nobody at his office knew what he was doing. In the present time, apparently, Ji-hoon was still investigating that case, and it was a part of his investigation that he became a lawyer who charged his client for only $1. Suddenly, Yi Jin called Ji-hoon to pick Mari up. It seemed like Mari was really drunk. As soon as Ji-hoon received that call, he was heading to the bar right away. Nobody would believe that Ji-hoon, a poor lawyer who didn't pay his rent on time, was actually a rich man. Back to the past, Ji-hoon was trying to find the owner of the temporary cell phone number. He investigated and interrogated all the politicians who seemed suspicious to him. Because of that, the judiciary received a lot of criticism from the government. As the consequence, the chief prosecutor had to take away all results of Ji-hoon's investigation. Ji-hoon couldn't do anything when they took everything away. Yi Jin approached and offered him a help, but Ji-hoon refused her offer politely. At the end, Ji-hoon failed to find the people who were responsible for the death of his father. Mari asked if it was the reason why Ji-hoon resigned from his work as the prosecutor. Yi Jin said that she didn't think so. Then, she continued her story. Back to the past. Day by day, Ji-hoon was getting more numb and unhappy. The only person who saw that he was terribly hurt was Ju-young. She approached Ji-hoon and tried to cheer him up, but he left her soon. He was too numb to talk to Ju-young. It seemed like nobody could help him to heal his broken heart. But Ju-young didn't give up. She kept following Ji-hoon around. Not long after that, it rained. Ji-hoon was just standing there, letting away the rain wash all over him. Then, he lied on the ground. It seemed like he enjoyed how his body got soaked from the rainwater, but the rain couldn't wash away his pain too. But suddenly, he smiled when he saw Ju-young lying beside him. It seemed like Ju-young managed to cheer him up a little bit, just like what Ju-young said back then. If Ji-hoon smiled for the third time in front of him, then they both should date each other. 2 years later, Ju-young got promoted at Bae's law firm because of her hard work. She got promoted as a chief lawyer who would work together in partnership with Beck's law firm, but turned out, it wasn't what Ju-young wanted. She gave her resignation letter to Mr. Beck. She said that she had found the person whom she wanted to work together with. Since Mr. Beck had thought of Ju-young as his daughter, he accepted her decision and supported everything she wanted to do. The next day, Ju-young was looking around the city to find a place for her new office. She finally arrived at a place that was owned by the present-time Ji-hoon's landlady. She checked the building that was used as a coffee shop before. After she considered the cheap price and the spacious room, she finally decided to rent that place. But one thing that interested her the most about that place was the view outside. She could see people doing their daily routine there. Those people seemed content with their simple life. It was hard for her to see that kind of view in the city. After that, she told about her decision to rent that place to Ji-hoon. She asked Ji-hoon to work together with her, but Ji-hoon rejected her invitation. He said that he couldn't resign from his work as a prosecutor. When Ju-young heard his answer, she realized that Ji-hoon was still thinking about Yoon-sub's case. She felt bad for Ji-hoon when she saw how skinny and dreary Ji-hoon had become. Ju-young finally took Ji-hoon to Yoon-sub's funeral to cheer him up. Then, she introduced herself formally to Ji-hoon. She said that she would wait for Ji-hoon until he was ready. Not long after that, Ju-young started packing her stuff and moving to her new office. She asked Ji-hoon to buy some fish with her. She planned to put those fish in her aquarium at the office. In the evening, she told Ji-hoon about her real reason why she established that new office. She said that she wanted to become an independent lawyer. That way, she could have freedom to defend innocent people. She hated it when she didn't have freedom to choose his client, like how she had to defend a bad person like Ki-tae in the past. Even though she was struggling financially because of her decision, she was at least happy with her life. She asked Ji-hoon once again to become independent with her. She said that she wanted to see Ji-hoon smile, and not only at them but at everyone. But it seemed like Ji-hoon was still thinking about his tragic past. He was still obsessed to find the answer to his father's case. Not long after that, Ji-hoon and Ju-young met each other again. Ji-hoon said that he realized that he still lived in the past. He was afraid if he couldn't let go of his past, which would definitely ruin his relationship with Ju-young. Ji-hoon realized that Ju-young's presence in his life had made his life better. She also managed to help him to heal his broken heart. Because of that, Ji-hoon decided to propose to her. Ju-young was happy when she heard that. She accepted his proposal and hugged him right away. She promised that she would always be there for Ji-hoon. The next day, Ju-young was excited when she received her business license, but while she was going to her old office to pack her stuff, she accidentally crashed into someone. She was confused because that person seemed in a hurry. That day, she had officially resigned from Beck's law firm. Mr. Beck and his personal assistant promised that they would always help Ju-young if she needed any help. They also said that they would always accept Ju-young if she wanted to come back to work there. At another place, the man who crashed into Ju-young early gave a document to someone, but turned out, when it was opened, it wasn't the right document. The document was Ju-young's business license. That man and Ju-young's documents got mixed up when they crashed into each other. Because of that, Ju-young's life might be in danger since it was a very important and confidential document. At her new office, Ju-young was busy organizing that place. A man suddenly came and knocked on the door. That man was Moo Jang. That time, he was still working as an employee at a company. He wanted to hire Ju-young to help him about the salary problem at his workplace. But while he entering that room, he seemed uncertain. He was afraid if the charge was really expensive. Ju-young smiled when she heard that. She understood about his concern. She said that the charge was actually very cheap, so she told Moo Jang not to worry. After Moo Jang left Ju-young's office, a suspicious person who had been looking for Ju-young came to that place as her first client. Moo Jang's arrival made Ju-young really happy. She soon decided that she would only charge his client for 1,000 won. Then, she called Ji-hoon and told him about it. But when she opened the document that was supposed to be her business license, she was really surprised. She realized that she's got the wrong document. Apparently, that document was a confidential document about Yoon-sub's case. Then, Ju-young asked Ji-hoon to wait for her at the office. Fortunately, she had left her office before the suspicious person came inside of that place. He searched for the confidential document there, but he couldn't find it. So, he followed Ju-young to the subway. Ju-young had to take the subway because she couldn't find any taxi. Before she arrived at her destination, she called Ji-hoon and told him to pick her up at the station. She wasn't aware of the suspicious man who had been following her. Ji-hoon had been waiting for Soo-young at the station, but he didn't see Soo-young coming out of the train, so he got inside of the train to look for her. Suddenly, someone screamed and ran from something. He looked very frightened after he saw a woman getting stabbed. Ji-hoon walked to the crime scene. He was afraid if that victim was Ju-young, and turned out he was right. He was shocked when he saw Ju-young lying there while getting soaked in blood. Ju-young called him in a low voice and tried to rub his face, but she failed to do so because she had fallen unconscious. Ji-hoon panicked and rushed her to the hospital, but sadly she was unable to be saved. Ji-hoon was terribly hurt when he found out about that. It wasn't long since he found happiness in his life again, but suddenly he had his heart broken again. The next day, the man who stabbed and killed Ju-young was found. When Eugene found out about that, she panicked and looked for Ji-hoon soon. She was afraid if Ji-hoon lost his control and behaved recklessly. Their boss had also warned Ji-hoon not to handle this murder case, but Ji-hoon refused to listen to them. When everyone stayed away from him, it was only Ju-young who stayed by his side. She was the only one who helped him to heal his broken heart. he thought that it would be useless for him to be a prosecutor if he couldn't do anything for her. When Ji-hoon met Ju-young's murderer, he realized that that person didn't recognize him. It meant that it wasn't him who killed his father. Because of that, Ji-hoon cancelled his plan to handle the case. He wouldn't waste his time to handle a case that would end like his father's case. After that, he went to Ju-young's office. He had a flashback about the time he spent with Ju-young there. It was one of the happiest moments in his life. When he saw the banner of the charge that Ju-young displayed there, he remembered Ju-young's reason to become an independent lawyer. He suddenly burst into tears when he saw the empty jar there. He put 1,001 in that jar. He imagined that if Ju-young were still alive, she would be really happy with that 1,001. Suddenly, Mu Jiang came to that office. He asked about the female lawyer who was going to handle his case. He was confused because he hadn't heard anything from her since then. He asked Ji-hoon if the charge was really 1,001, and Ji-hoon said yes. He realized that he had to continue what Ju-young did and wanted, and for the first time in his life, he wore his black sunglasses, which later became his attribute. He wore it to hide his sadness away, and not only that, he also faked his smile, the smile that was always admired by his former lover. In the present time, Mari got sad and cried when she heard Ji-hoon's sad story. She was touched when she knew why Ji-hoon stopped working as a prosecutor. Apparently, Ji-hoon resigned from his old work because he didn't want people to keep an eye on him. He wanted to investigate Ju-young and Yoon-sub's tragic cases peacefully. Min-hyuk was really disappointed when Ji-hoon resigned from his workplace. He didn't know what was Ji-hoon's real reason to stop working as a prosecutor. It was only Yi-jin who knew about his reason. Not long after that, Ji-hoon arrived at that place. He was confused when Mari gave him that weird look. When Yi-jin saw Ji-hoon there, she left that place immediately. Because of that, Ji-hoon had to take Mari to the office. He couldn't take Mari home because he didn't know her home address. Mari already fell asleep before he could ask her about her home address. The next day, Mu Jiang's family looked very happy because they received some money from the lottery club. They saved some money to pay for the office rent. They still had no idea that Ji-hoon was actually a rich man. They also promised his son to buy him many toys. But the first thing that they needed to do was to replace their old half-broken van. He saw an advertisement of a cheap car on the internet. Mari told him to be careful because that kind of advertisement was usually a fraud. But Mu Jiang arrogantly said that he was good at identifying those frauds. He had many experiences in dealing with those criminals. At another place, Min-hyuk was happy when he met Yi-jin's daughter. Yi-jin's daughter had grown beautifully. Yi-jin was a single mother. Her daughter's nanny was sick that day, so Yi-jin had to bring her daughter to the office. At Ji-hoon's office, Ji-hoon was confused by Mari's attitude change. Mari behaved really differently today. She smiled at him and even offered him some coffee, but Ji-hoon rejected her offer immediately. He gave her his annoying smile instead. He did that to tease Mari as usual, but Mari kept smiling at him. Ji-hoon began to get scared because of Mari's weird behavior. He was afraid if Mari had planned something wicked for him. Because of that, Ji-hoon kept teasing Mari, and his plan finally worked. He saw Mari giving him that annoyed face again. At another place, Mu Jiang met with a used car dealer. He disguised himself as a mechanic to prevent himself from being scammed. He was happy when he was test driving the car. He found the car was very comfortable. He wanted to buy the car because the price was very cheap. He didn't know that the man was actually a fraudster who planned to scam him since the beginning. He was called GM-sik. GM-sik told him that there was a problem with the car machine. He made some noise with his voice and told him that it was from the car machine. He also said that there was a problem with the car suspension. To make it look like the car was really broken, his friend helped him to rock the car. He also spilled some car oil to make it look like the car was leaking. After seeing all of those fake malfunctions, Mu Jiang canceled his plan to buy the car. That man began to persuade him to buy another car. He claimed that car was much better than this one. At the office, Yi-jin was investigating the case about used car scams. She found that there were groups of fraudsters who scam others by selling broken cars, and to protect their businesses, they sent some money to their leader each month. The leader of those fraudsters was called Car King. It meant that in order to dismantle this syndicate, they needed to find and arrest Car King. Apparently, Yi-jin had a secret informant that would help her with this investigation. At another place, GM-sik managed to persuade Mu Jiang to buy another car. Mu Jiang purchased that car right away without checking it before. Because of that, not long after he drove that car, the car already broke down. The crane operator was confused when he saw Mu Jiang's car broke down. He wondered how a mechanic couldn't tell that the car he had just bought was broken. At the office, Ji-hoon was getting more scared because of Mari's sudden nice attitude. He tried to make a guess at what made her behave that way. He thought that Mari acted that way because she wanted to work there after her internship was over. Mari wanted to get mad because his boss didn't appreciate her nice attitude, but she could only become sad. Mu Jiang returned to the used car dealer to protest about his broken car. He asked them to return his money, but the leader of that group called Young Gun refused his request. He said that the car was broken when Mu Jiang drove it. Mu Jiang couldn't say anything when he heard that. He was finally heading home with a sad face. while he was looking at the moon, he remembered his family. He was sad when he was thinking about them. He planned to buy them something, but he had wasted all of his money on the broken car. Because of that problem, Mu Jiang didn't go to the office for days. Seeing him being absent for a long time, Ji-hoon was suspicious that he was in trouble. Mu Jiang spent his time walking aimlessly down the street. He was sad when he thought about his car. He had just bought that car, but it was already useless and broken. Then, he looked at his laundry. He was sad by the thought that his laundry might be closed soon. But suddenly, he was shocked when he saw Ji-hoon's face there. After Ji-hoon forced him to tell him about what happened, Mu Jiang finally told him everything. After hearing Mu Jiang's story, Ji-hoon and his team prepared themselves to investigate that case. Ji-hoon came to the used car dealer and pretended to be a buyer. He told them that it was the first time for him to buy a used car. He said that because he wanted to see how those fraudsters were going to scam him. After he picked a car, Ji-sik and his friend did the same techniques that they used to trick Mu Jiang. But instead of canceling his plan to buy that car, he told them that all of those cars' malfunctions suited him well. He even said that he loved the broken car suspension. He insisted on buying that car even though those fraudsters tried to convince him that the car was broken. They even removed the wheel from the car to show him that the car was broken, but Ji-hoon still insisted on buying it. Ji-sik finally had no idea how to trick him anymore, so he ran away from there quickly. Ji-hoon refused to let him go. He chased him immediately. Unfortunately, he got stuck between two cars. Ji-sik laughed at him when he saw that, but Ji-hoon finally managed to escape from that place. Ji-hoon ran as fast as he could that he almost caught Ji-sik, but suddenly, he slipped on the ground and fell. Ji-sik laughed at him again. When Mari saw that, she refused to just stand there. She suddenly ran fast toward Ji-sik and threw a shoe at him. Luckily, her shoe hit him right in his head. Ji-hoon and his team finally managed to catch Ji-sik. While they were interrogating him, he admitted that he was guilty, and he was afraid if his boss got mad at him. He told Ji-hoon that he was an orphan, and he scammed people because he had to support his dying brother. Mari and Mu Jiang felt bad for Ji-sik when they heard his sad story. They even told Ji-hoon to let him go, but Ji-hoon scolded Ji-sik instead. But Ji-hoon said that if Ji-sik took him to work together with him, then he would let him go. Mu Jiang and Mari were confused when they heard that. They had no idea what Ji-hoon planned by working with those fraudsters. They suggested him to stick with their old plan instead, which was taking Mu Jiang's money back and leaving that place. But Ji-hoon asked her about other people's money who were also scammed by them. It seemed like Ji-hoon had planned to dismantle this syndicate since the beginning. Mari and Mu Jiang finally agreed with Ji-hoon's plan. Mari couldn't do anything when Ji-hoon forced him to pretend to be a random fraudster. They finally got accepted at Ji-sik's workplace. Ji-hoon planned to gather important and secret information in that place. He saw a suspicious man passing by him. He pretended to need to use the bathroom so he could follow him. In a room, Ji-hoon listened to the leader of the group's conversation secretly. According to that conversation, that group needed to find 100 million won to give to Car King for their monthly bribe. Suddenly, a man came to that place and saw Ji-hoon. Ji-hoon pretended that he was a new intern who got lost. Fortunately, Ji-sik came at the right time and saved him. He told Ji-hoon that a new worker like him was not allowed to be there. Then, Ji-hoon tricked Ji-sik so that he could tell him the truth, and his strategy finally worked. Ji-sik accidentally told him that his boss was being investigated by a prosecutor, but they didn't have to worry because everything was perfectly under control. Yi-ji was interrogating Young-gun. She found out that there's something suspicious about his business, but unluckily, it was difficult for them to arrest him because they didn't have strong evidence. Apparently, the syndicate had prepared everything carefully. If they were getting suspected, they always had their undisciplined marketers ready to be blamed. There wasn't even the name of the company in their company contract. There were only the names of their marketers. Then, Young-gun mentioned about Yi-jin's daughter. Yi-jin saw it as a threat that if she dared to investigate his business, then her daughter would be in danger. Not long after that, Young-gun returned to his office. Ji-hoon accidentally heard Young-gun's plan to have a meeting during the lunch tomorrow. After Ji-hoon and his team investigated Young-gun's group any further, they found out that Young-gun was only a fraction of National Criminal Organization. Mu Jiang was scared when he heard that. Mari asked him how they were going to investigate and solve this case. They had no right to investigate this case because they were not prosecutors. Ji-hoon said that it wasn't a problem because they would have a prosecutor. The next day, since Young-gun still didn't have money to give to Car King, he asked his marketers to sell a car for 100 million won immediately. All marketers there thought that it was impossible and crazy idea, so nobody dared to take that challenge except Ji-hoon. He even arrogantly said that he would sell that car before his food was getting cold. Ji-hoon was excited when he met his first prospective buyer. Turned out, his first prospective buyer was Min-hyuk. Min-hyuk was surprised to see Ji-hoon there. He asked him why he now became a car seller. Ji-hoon told him that he really needed money to pay the office rent. That was why he had to take the job as a marketer there. After Min-hyuk heard that tragic story, he felt bad for Ji-hoon. Because of that, he believed everything that Ji-hoon said, including when Ji-hoon persuaded and fooled him to buy another car. Min-hyuk looked very happy after he purchased that car. He really believed that Ji-hoon had helped him to find the best car there. After that, he left that place with his new car. Young-gun was amazed by Ji-hoon. He couldn't believe that a new worker like him managed to sell a broken car for 100 million won. Because of Ji-hoon, Young-gun would be able to give their monthly bribe to Car King. To appreciate what he did, he asked Ji-hoon to meet the big boss with him. Apparently, it was Yi-jin who told Min-hyuk to buy a car from Young-gun. Min-hyuk bragged about his ability to buy the greatest car there with a cheap price. He also told her about Ji-hoon, who now worked there as a marketer. He said that he felt bad for his new pathetic life. Yi-jin didn't respond to him because she knew the real story. Turned out, it was Ji-hoon who asked Yi-jin to handle this case since the beginning, and when Yi-jin said that she had a secret informant that would help her with this investigation, she was talking about Ji-hoon. Ji-hoon put a smiley sticker on his 1,000 won. Apparently, that smiley sticker was a tracking device. He then put that 1,000 won in a suitcase that contained 100 million won. By doing that, they would be able to trace Young-gun and where he went to have a meeting. Min-hyuk wondered why they went after the cars in front of them. He didn't know that Ji-hoon was inside of one of those cars. Ji-hoon kept smiling like a crazy person because his plan worked. Min-hyuk finally found out about what happened. When they arrived at their destination, he got mad because nobody told him about the truth. As expected, it was Ji-hoon's idea to keep everything from Min-hyuk. He didn't want Min-hyuk to ruin his plan because he knew what kind of person he was. Min-hyuk thought that they were going to deal with those thugs, so he got out of the van and began to warm up. He tried to show off his taekwondo skill, but he failed miserably because of his backache. Yi-jin was annoyed when she saw that. She said that it was impossible for the four of them to face those thugs. At another place, Mari and Mu Jang were blocking the exit of that place. Car King finally came to that meeting place. He asked everyone to give him their monthly bribes. Young-gun smiled because he thought that his group was going to give the largest bribe. He turned around to get Ji-hoon. He wanted to introduce him to Car King, but he didn't find him anywhere. Suddenly, the police came to that place. All of the fraudsters who gathered there ran away immediately, but unfortunately, before they managed to leave that place, they were blocked by a car. Turned out, the driver of that car was Ji-hoon. All of those thugs got out of their cars immediately. They got mad and wanted to beat up Ji-hoon, but Ji-hoon mocked and blamed them for selling him a broken car. After Ji-hoon revealed his true identity to them, those thugs were getting more angry. They crashed Ji-hoon's car right away. Suddenly, Min-hyuk came to that place. He wanted to save Ji-hoon from them. He tried to scare those thugs away by showing them his mediocre taekwondo skill. He told Ji-hoon to run away immediately. He didn't know that Ji-hoon had left that place before he came there. At another place, Car King was heading to the back door to go out of that place, but he was unable to open the door because it had been blocked by Mu Jang and Mari. When he finally came out of that place, he saw the police and the judiciary had been waiting for him. They had strong evidence against him and they planned to arrest him with it. Meanwhile, Min-hyuk was still struggling to fight those thugs. Fortunately, the police came there in the right time. Min-hyuk was glad because he could still save himself. If those police didn't come, he might have died by that time. Meanwhile, Ji-hoon was leaving that place with a happy face. He was happy because he managed to catch Car King. Mu Jang finally got his money and his old van back. Ji-hoon's landlady and her friends were hanging out at Ji-hoon's office. They were watching the news about the arrest of the mafia on TV. The news stated that the police managed to arrest them because of Yi-jin and Min-hyuk. The truth was, Ji-hoon was the person who was responsible for this arrest. But Ji-hoon decided to keep his contribution as a secret. He wanted Min-hyuk to appear on TV even though they didn't show his entire face. Min-hyuk's father was really proud when he saw his son on TV. He showed it to Mari's grandfather. He asked if Min-hyuk was already good enough to get married. Mari's grandfather understood what he tried to say, but he pretended like he didn't know what he meant. Ji-hoon and his team visited a small restaurant to celebrate their success. Even though they were in the middle of celebrating, Ji-hoon was still eager to tease Mari. He missed her because he rarely saw her these past few days. At another place, there was a man who was waiting for something. But suddenly, someone else came to that place and gave him an injection. It was unknown if Song-wook was dead or still alive. But the next day, the person who injected him that night came to Ji-hoon's office. When Ji-hoon saw him, he clenched his fist. He felt strong emotions when he saw him. That person somehow reminded Ji-hoon of the tragedy from his past, the tragedy that made his father and his lover died. Apparently, Ji-hoon had found Ju-young's murderer. He managed to find him from the CCTV footage at the station. Unfortunately, since he was wearing mask, he could only see and remember his eyes. Because of that, he knew that Woo-suk, the man who confessed that he was Ju-young's murderer, was not the real murderer. Woo-suk's eyes were different from the eyes of Ju-young's murderer. He knew that he was only a scapegoat, and someone out there ordered him to confess that he was Ju-young's murderer. Apparently, Ji-hoon had met with Woo-suk secretly all this time. he persuaded him to tell him about the truth. He promised that if he told him about everything, he would help him to get out of prison soon. After a while, Woo-suk began to be tempted by Ji-hoon's promise. He asked if Ji-hoon would really keep his promise. After Ji-hoon managed to convince him, he finally admitted that he wasn't the real murderer. But the problem was, he didn't know about the person who gave him the order. He had only seen that person once, so he asked Ji-hoon to show him some pictures of the suspects. He might identify him when he saw his picture. That night, the person who was suspected as Ju-young's murderer killed another man. He was called Song-wook. He was the person who got injected that night. The next day, Song-wook's dead body was found by the police. Not long after that, Song-wook's murderer came to Ji-hoon's office. Ji-hoon saw his eyes and began to feel strong emotions. Those eyes reminded him of the eyes of Ju-young's murderer. He wondered if he was the man he had been looking for all this time. Ji-hoon pretended as if nothing was going on. He greeted that man like he greeted his client. He asked why that man came to his office. That man said that he wanted to hire Ji-hoon as his lawyer. He didn't care if had to pay dearly for his service. Ji-hoon didn't like his arrogant manner, so he rejected his request right away. But then, he changed his mind. He finally agreed to help that man, but first, he asked him to show his identity card. Surprisingly, that man had many identity cards. He gave one of those cards to Ji-hoon. In that identity card, it stated that his name was Kim Sun-ho. Ji-hoon stared at his identity card for a while. Then, he told Mari to make a copy of it. He also checked and studied Sun-ho's file. Sun-ho mocked Ji-hoon because his charge was too cheap. Ji-hoon was annoyed by him, so he said that the charge applied per second. Moo Jang was excited when he heard that. He was happy to imagine that they were going to be rich soon. After Mari finished making a copy of Sun-ho's identity card, Ji-hoon told Sun-ho that he could leave his office now. He said that he would contact him soon. While Sun-ho leaving that office, Ji-hoon stared at him from the window. He remembered the time when he failed to find Ju-young's murderer. Back then, Ji-hoon told Ji-jin that he was going to change his way to handle the case. He hoped that by doing that, people would come to him to ask for his help. When Ji-hoon checked the copy of Sun-ho's identity card, he saw Sun-ho's picture wasn't copied. Because of that, he believed that Sun-ho was the real Ju-young's murderer. He suspected that he came there to check on him. As soon as Ji-hoon realized that, he came out of the office and ran to catch him. But unfortunately, Sun-ho was already gone. At another place, Yi-jin was talking about Song-wook's case. Apparently, Song-wook was a CEO of Cayman Funds. He was one of the people who received the slush money from the JQ Group. Because of that, Min-hyuk and Mari would be able to investigate the case again. But the problem was, the result of the autopsy showed that there was no sign of murder. It seemed like the murderer wanted to make it look like it was a suicide case, but Min-hyuk found a CCTV footage near the crime scene. In that footage, they could see a suspicious man who came to that place before Song-wook died, and left that place after Song-wook died. At the office, Mari was looking for Sun-ho's home address. When she found it, she found out that it was actually a fake address. The phone number on Sun-ho's identity card was also inactive. Ji-hoon returned to his office. He lied to Moo Jang and Mari about the reason why he chased Sun-ho. He told them that he chased him because he believed that he was a fraudster. He didn't want Moo Jang and Mari to get involved in Ju-young's case. After Mari heard that, she suggested Ji-hoon to check the CCTV outside. When Ji-hoon was checking that CCTV, Mari noticed that his face was really serious. She realized that Sun-ho wasn't a random fraudster like Ji-hoon said, but a person who had something to do with Ji-hoon's tragic past. Apparently, Sun-ho's real name was Min Chol. That evening, he burned some evidence outside. It was the evidence of the murder he committed yesterday. He also burned his fake identity card there. While he was burning those evidence, he called someone on the phone. He told that person that Ji-hoon didn't recognize him. Turned out, he came to Ji-hoon's office to see if Ji-hoon was still investigating Ju-young's case. He was happy when he found out that Ji-hoon didn't recognize him. He thought that Ji-hoon had stopped investigating that case. Mari was curious about what Ji-hoon was doing, so she followed him secretly. But suddenly, he came out of nowhere and surprised him.
변호사님 기다렸죠?
따라왔는데?
죄송해요.
There wasn't a single day where Ji-hoon didn't tease and bully Mari. Mari finally told him about the reason why she followed him. She said that she wanted to talk to him. After that, Ji-hoon and Mari had a drink together. Ji-hoon teased Mari again and laughed when Mari got mad at him.
짜네요.
짠?
Then, Mari suddenly became serious. She told Ji-hoon that she knew about Ju-young's case. She said that she genuinely wanted to help him. She was sad to see him suffer. Ji-hoon didn't say anything when he heard that. Then, he asked Mari not to mention about that case again. Mari reminded Ji-hoon that he hadn't granted her a wish. Back then, after Mari helped him not to spoil the killer in the comic book, Ji-hoon thanked her and said that he would do one thing that Mari wanted. So, that evening, Mari asked Ji-hoon not to think about Ju-young's case alone. Because of the death of the man with glasses, Beck's law firm didn't have to deal with the JQ Group's case anymore. Then, Mr. Beck and Young Jun came to a room. Before they had a conversation, Young Jun closed the door and the windows. He made sure that no one could listen to their conversation. It seemed like they were going to have an important and secret conversation. Turned out, Mr. Beck and Young Jun talked about the case of that man, which was being investigated by the judiciary. It seemed like they had something to do with that case. At the office, Min Hyuk was confused and surprised when his boss told him to stop investigating that case. He said that the case had been officially considered as a suicide case. Min Hyuk was getting more confused when Eugene agreed to stop their investigation, but turned out, Eugene was only pretending. She did that so she could investigate the case secretly. While Mari was busy doing yoga, her mother suddenly came and disturbed her. She showed a picture of a man to her. Apparently, her mother was worrying about her single daughter. She worried because Mari had never been in any relationship before, so she wanted to find a perfect match for her son. But Mari refused her suggestion right away. She said that those men approached her because they only wanted her grandfather's law firm. She only wanted a man who loved her for what she was, but she said that she would still meet those men for her mother. At the office, Ji-hoon was confused with Moo Jang and Mari's strange behavior. He knew that they were doing something behind them. They actually told him about the truth. Turned out, Mari had told Moo Jang about everything, so they decided to help Ji-hoon to catch the person who came there yesterday. Mari said that they seriously wanted to help Ji-hoon because Ji-hoon had helped him all this time. He had also helped many poor people around him. Ji-hoon didn't know what to say when he heard that. He finally let them to help him, but when he saw Moo Jang's sketch of Min Chul, he was soon disappointed again. There was no way for Moo Jang to help him with that inaccurate sketch of Min Chul, so he grabbed a blank page and tried to show them how to make a good sketch. Turned out, his sketch was just as ugly as Moo Jang's. Mari was annoyed by that, so she made her own sketch and showed it to them. Moo Jang and Ji-hoon were surprised when they saw it. Turned out, Mari was really good at drawing. After Ji-hoon saw that sketch, he finally stopped playing around. He looked at that sketch seriously. After that, Ji-hoon took Moo Jang and Mari to meet with Woo-suk. Ji-hoon showed the sketch that Mari made to Woo-suk, but unluckily, Woo-suk didn't really remember the face of Ju-young's murderer. It was because when he saw his face that time, he was being hanged upside down. Ji-hoon was mad when he heard that. Moo Jang tried to help Woo-suk to remember the face by hypnotizing him. Ji-hoon thought that he was only playing around, but surprisingly, Moo Jang's hypnotism worked. Woo-suk had a flashback about the time when he lost in gambling. As the consequence, he was dragged and hanged upside down by a group of people. Suddenly, Ju-young's murderer came to that room. He approached him and offered him a sum of money. He said that if Woo-suk wanted to confess as a murderer, he would give those money to him. Woo-suk suddenly remembered his face. He confirmed that the man in Mari's sketch was the same man who ordered him back then. Then, he gave the address of the gambling house to Ji-hoon and his team. After that, Ji-hoon and his team came to that address. When they arrived there, they found that the gambling house didn't exist anymore. That place had been replaced by a warehouse. Ji-hoon noticed the t-shirt that was worn by one of the workers there. He recognized the symbol in that t-shirt. It was the symbol of Fire Bear's organization. Because of that, Ji-hoon came to Fire Bear's place. He managed to get the new address of the gambling house from Fire Bear. At another place, Min Hyuk disguised himself as a murderer. Meanwhile, Eugene was busy investigating the case at the office. She was confused when she heard what Min Hyuk was doing. Min Hyuk thought that what he did was really cool. He came to the crime scene and acted like he was a detective. He tried to find the road that the killer used so he wasn't caught by CCTV. But suddenly, Min Hyuk screamed. He was surprised and frightened by some owl sounds. But then, he discovered something there. It was a forest security camera. The next day, he showed his discovery to Eugene. He seemed very proud of what he was doing. Apparently, the forest security camera managed to capture the killer. From that CCTV footage, it seemed like that the killer used the Route 77 to flee from the crime scene. So, to make sure that he really used that route, Min Hyuk suggested that they check the CCTV in that area. Ji-hoon and his team finally arrived at the gambling house. Ji-hoon gave some money to Moo Jang and Mari and told them to gamble there. They needed to convince people there that they came there as the gamblers. While Moo Jang and Mari were gambling, Ji-hoon watched the insect fighting near him. He participated in guessing the number where the insect would swim to. Apparently, Ji-hoon knew the secret of this game. He noticed the host putting some food in a certain number. He believed that the insect would go to that number. Because of that, he decided to participate in that game and bet on his 1,001, and as he expected, he won this game. Meanwhile, Moo Jang and Mari kept losing the games. Moo Jang had even lost his watch because he lost in gambling. Ji-hoon's consecutive wins attracted other participants' attention. They decided to guess the same number that Ji-hoon guessed. Because of that, they won the games and the host lost a lot of money. The host was annoyed by Ji-hoon. Meanwhile, the participants began to worship Ji-hoon. Ji-hoon was happy with their cheer for him. He smiled proudly and acted like he was the god of gamblers. The owner of the gambling house was called Kong Min. He was mad when he found out about those wins. Because of that, he told his subordinates to bring Ji-hoon to him. While Ji-hoon was heading to his room, he suddenly called Mari and brought her with him. In that room, Ji-hoon pretended like he was the god of gamblers. He told Kang Min that he had traveled around the world, and that he had visited many casinos out there. When Kang Min heard that, he began to get scared. So, he asked Ji-hoon not to come to his place again. If Ji-hoon did that, he would give a sum of money to him. Ji-hoon refused those money right away. Instead, he made another offer. He asked Kang Min to tell him about Min-chul's whereabouts. If he did that, he would leave his gambling house alone. When Kang Min saw Min-chul's face in that sketch, he remembered that Min-chul once visited him to pay off his debt, but after that, he left right away. Kang Min said that he didn't know anything about Min-chul. When Min-chul came to his gambling house, it was his broker who took care of him. Because of that, Kang Min gave the address of his broker to Ji-hoon. After that, Ji-hoon and his team came to that address. Turned out, Kang Min's broker was Fire Bear. Fire Bear was scared when he saw Ji-hoon's serious face, so he finally told him that he had been in contact with Min-chul lately. Before he told Ji-hoon about Min-chul any further, he asked everybody to get out of that room. He wanted to have that important and serious conversation with Ji-hoon alone. Fire Bear said that he was ordered by Min-chul to intimidate the man with glasses. Min-chul didn't want that man to attend an event, but when Fire Bear was about to execute his mission, Min-chul called him and said that the mission was cancelled. A few days later, Fire Bear was surprised when he saw the news about the death of that man. Then, Fire Bear gave the invitation letter of that said event to Ji-hoon. Ji-hoon was surprised when he saw that. Apparently, the event was a private party that was held by the JQ group. At another place, Yi-jin and her team finally found the car of the killer. At different place, Min-chul had a meeting with his boss. He thanked him for giving the Cayman funds to him. But suddenly, his boss said that Song-wook's death seemed suspicious to him. Even though Song-wook had betrayed him, he found it strange that he died at the right time. Min-chul felt that his boss accused him of murdering him, but his boss said that he didn't care about what happened to his subordinates. The only thing that mattered to him was his businesses. Then, he gave the invitation letter of the JQ group's private party to Min-chul. Apparently, Min-chul killed Song-wook because he wanted to take over Cayman funds. At another place, Min-hyuk and Yi-jin visited the car of Song-wook's killer. They found out that the car had been parked there for a long time. Because of that, Yi-jin and Min-hyuk decided to stay there to see the owner of the car. Not long after that, Min-hyuk came out of the car to buy some water. At the same time, Min-chul came to that place to check his car. After that, he left that place immediately. Because Min-hyuk was still gone, Yi-jin decided to follow Min-chul alone. She called Min-hyuk and told him to see Min-chul's car license plate. But unfortunately, Yi-jin suddenly had an accident. Min-hyuk scolded Yi-jin when he found out about her accident. It wasn't because of his damaged car, but because he worried about Yi-jin. Luckily, they found the invitation letter of the JQ group's private party. They could figure out their next step because of that invitation letter. Ji-hoon and his team attended the JQ group's private party. They went to that place by using Mu-jang's old van. The security guards suspected them because of that ugly van, but after they showed them the invitation letter, they allowed them to attend the party. Apparently, Ji-hoon and his team came to that place because they wanted to find Min-chul. Suddenly, Mari was surprised when she saw her mother attending that party. Her mother was also surprised to see Mari there. Ji-hoon introduced himself to Mari's mother. He said Mari's mother was very beautiful. Mari's mother suspected that Ji-hoon was the reason why Mari kept refusing the men she suggested her to date. Mari was embarrassed when her mother said that. To convince her mother that there was nothing between her and Ji-hoon, she finally agreed to meet the man that her mother wanted her to meet. Meanwhile, Ji-hoon was busy teaching Mu-jang on how to be an elegant guest. But ironically, after Ji-hoon left, someone approached Mu-jang and mistook him as a waiter. Turned out, Min-hyuk and Yi-jin were also attending that private party. They came there to find Song-wook's killer. Min-hyuk saw Mari having a drink with a man. He was jealous when he saw that. Suddenly, Mari's mother approached him. She told him that the man Mari was talking to was the second son of a successful businessman. She said that Mari and that man looked very good together. Min-hyuk was very jealous when he heard that, but he tried to hide his feeling by complimenting Mari's mother. He said that Mari's mother looked very beautiful. He didn't know that Mari only talked to that man because she was forced by her mother. She also used him to help her to find Min-chul. After that man said that he didn't know Min-chul, Mari left him right away. That man was amazed by Mari. It was his first time to meet a woman who wasn't interested in him. While Ji-hoon was strolling around that place, he finally saw Min-chul. He then followed him secretly. He saw Min-chul met a group of men and bowed to his boss. Ji-hoon hid immediately when he saw the face of Min-chul's boss. He found out that Min-chul's boss was actually Mr. Beck. He suddenly remembered the reason why Ji-yeon left Beck's law firm back then. She said that she didn't want to defend a bad person. He also remembered the time before Ji-yeon was murdered. Ju-young said that she was going to give something to him. Ji-hoon picked a knife and followed Min-chul secretly. His emotions started to feel out of control. He remembered Ju-young's last moment before she died in the train. While everyone was busy watching the fireworks, Ji-hoon slowly walked toward Min-chul. He planned to stab him to death, just like how Min-chul stabbed Ju-young to death back then. Mari saw him and realized what he was going to do. Min-chul also saw him, but Ji-hoon was already too close to him. While Ji-hoon was following Min-chul early, Min-chul suddenly came to a room, so Ji-hoon couldn't follow him anymore. But fortunately, Mu-jang was still pretending that he was a waiter, so he followed Min-chul to that room. After that, he showed Ji-hoon a video about what was going on in that room. Apparently, Min-chul was attending an auction with many big bosses, but Ji-hoon realized that it was not an auction but money laundering. Suddenly, Min-chul noticed Mu-jang there. He asked Mu-jang to give him his phone, but fortunately, Min-chul's boss was about to leave that place. Min-chul left Mu-jang for a second, and when he came back, Mu-jang was already gone. Then, Min-chul came out of that room. Mari was anxious when she realized that Ji-hoon was going to kill Min-chul. But suddenly, the rich man whom Mari talked to early approached her. That man told her about Min-chul. Ji-hoon finally decided not to kill Min-chul. He remembered about what Ju-young said to him back then. Ju-young asked Ji-hoon not to live in the past. Because of those words, he managed to calm himself down. After that, Ji-hoon met Mu-jang and Mari. When Mari saw him, she told him about Min-chul. She said that Min-chul was the CEO of Cayman Funds. He was chosen as the CEO recently. Not long after that, the CEO of the JQ Group made an appearance. He greeted and welcomed all guests there. When Ji-hoon heard his voice, he thought that his voice sounded familiar. He suddenly realized that it was the voice of a man who called him when his father died. The CEO of the JQ Group was called Choi Ki-suk. Apparently, Ki-suk was the person who was responsible for Ji-hoon's father's death. Ki-suk announced that the auction would begin soon, and the person who offered the highest price would have a lunch with him. Min-hyuk laughed when he heard that. He thought that it was so silly. Nobody wanted to spend that much money to have a lunch with Ki-suk. Then, he covered his mouth with a board to hide his laugh. Because Min-hyuk raised his board, Ki-suk thought that Min-hyuk wanted to bid. Min-hyuk panicked immediately. He was the least person in that room who wanted to bid. Suddenly, someone made a bid of 100 million won. Everybody was surprised when heard that. They were even more surprised when they found out that Ji-hoon was the one who made the bid, especially Choi Ki-suk. Apparently, Ki-suk was Ji-hoon's boss when he was working as a prosecutor. He was surprised to see Ji-hoon there. Mu-jang and Mari were also surprised when Ji-hoon made that bid. They asked how Ji-hoon could have that much money. After the party was over, Min-chul saw Ji-hoon waiting for him in his room. Ji-hoon said that he had found out about who Min-chul actually was. Min-chul panicked when he heard that. He took a knife out of his pocket and tried to kill Ji-hoon. Apparently, Ji-hoon had prepared for everything. He managed to fight Min-chul back and defeated him. When Ji-hoon covered Min-chul's mouth, he suddenly had a flashback about the time when Ju-young was brutally murdered by Min-chul. He wanted Min-chul to feel the same pain that Ju-young felt back then. But suddenly, Ji-hoon remembered Ju-young's words again. He finally decided to get rid of his knife and let Min-chul go again. After that, he left from that room. When Ji-hoon returned home, he displayed the pictures of the men who were responsible for the death of his father and his lover. Suddenly, he thought about Mari, who suddenly appeared in his life. He suspected that it was also a part of Mr. Beck's game. He knew since the beginning that Mari was Beck's grandfather. When he remembered Ju-young's smile again, he couldn't decide if he wanted to continue investigating those cases or not. The next day, Mari was doing some research about the JQ Group. She still wanted to help Ji-hoon. Mu-jang wondered again where Ji-hoon could have 100 million won as a bid for the auction last night. Mari then told him about his suspicion on Ji-hoon. She thought that Ji-hoon was actually a rich man, but he pretended to be poor. She also said that she once saw Ji-hoon driving a luxury car. Suddenly, Ji-hoon came to that place. Mari was excited when she saw him there. She quickly told him about her discovery about the JQ Group, but Ji-hoon told her that he had decided to stop investigating that case. He thought that they were not ready yet. Then, he asked a hypothetical question to Mari. He asked what would she do if the person she respected the most did something horrible. Mari had no idea that Ji-hoon was talking about his grandfather. She thought that Ji-hoon wanted to ask for her opinion for something about his past. So, she answered that even though she was not as strong as Ji-hoon, she believed that the justice must be upheld. So, she would punish that person for the crime he had committed. Ji-hoon didn't say anything for a while. Then, while smiling, he took off his sunglasses and put them on Mari's face. He hoped that those sunglasses would help Mari to get rid of her sadness. After that, he left the office. Mu-jang and Mari were confused by Ji-hoon's strange behavior, but Mari thought that Ji-hoon was only teasing her like usual. She had no idea that it might be the last time she saw Ji-hoon. Ji-hoon visited Ju-young's graveyard. He was staring at it for a long time. He wanted to show Ju-young that he had moved on from his past. The next day, Mu Jiang was excited when he told his wife about his plan to help Ji-hun that day, but suddenly, he received a text from someone. He was surprised when he read that text, then, he rushed to the office right away. At the office, Mari was confused when she saw Mu Jiang seemed unhappy. Before Mu Jiang told her about what happened, he took a deep breath, then, he told Mari that Ji-hun had quit his job there. He was mad because Ji-hun didn't say a proper goodbye to him. Ji-hun only said his goodbye through a text. Mu Jiang felt sad because he thought that he meant nothing for Ji-hun. Then, he gave Ji-hun's farewell letter to Mari. In that letter, Ji-hun expressed his regret to leave Mu Jiang and Mari. He thanked them for always willing to help him. That day, Ji-hun suddenly disappeared into thin air. Nobody knew what was happening to him or where he was going. He was there helping many people, and now he disappeared. A year later, Mari finally had become a lawyer who worked at her grandfather's law firm. She managed to handle and win some important cases. Because of that, she was considered as the best lawyer there. But in spite of her great achievements, Mari wasn't as happy as she used to. Every day, she came to Ji-hun's office and fed the fish in the aquarium. She reminisced about her happy time with Ji-hun and Mu Jiang in the past. Suddenly, she felt the presence of another person in that room. She screamed when she saw Mu Jiang there. Turned out, Mu Jiang also often came to that office to clean it. They wished that Ji-hun would return soon. They suspected that Ji-hun returned to France since he once lived there. He also spoke French fluently. Ji-hun seemed to be in France. He was hanging out at a coffee shop by himself. He didn't wear the black sunglasses that he used to wear anymore. It seemed like he had moved on from his sad and tragic past. He had started his new life somewhere. He lived his life to the fullest. He began to smile like how Ju Young wanted him to back then. Meanwhile, Min Hyuk finally worked as a lawyer at Beck's law firm too. He worked there because his father worked there, and because he wanted to get closer to Mari. But Mari couldn't stop thinking about Ji-hun. She couldn't forget Ji-hun. She didn't realize that she had fallen in love with that crazy person. Ji-hun was leaving that coffee shop. That place was called France Town. It was actually located in South Korea, so it wasn't true that Ji-hun lived in France. He now worked as a law consultant who gave free legal advice to people who needed them. But there were some people who didn't believe that Ji-hun was a lawyer, so Ji-hun told them about his experience as a lawyer back then. He told them that he had won 55 legal cases, and he had only managed one legal case that ended without resolution. Suddenly, an elderly woman called Mal Soon approached him. She asked him to give those documents to the prosecutor. She told him that her grandchild who worked at the JQ group was arrested, but she believed that her grandchild was innocent. In the evening, Mari had a drink with Eugene. She was really drunk. She told Eugene about her feelings. She told her about her happy time with Ji-hun in the past. Then, she suddenly cried. She tried to hide her sadness with the black sunglasses that Ji-hun gave her. At the office, Ji-hun opened and read Mal Soon's letter. From that letter, he found out that Mal Soon's grandchild was being framed by the JQ Group's pharmaceutical company. He realized that he was really needed now, so it meant that he had to work as a lawyer again. He had to help Mal Soon to save her grandchild. The next day, one of Mari's clients was trying to please Mari by giving her a lot of presents. He wanted to thank Mari for helping him, but actually, his real intention was to ask Mari out on a date, but Mari wasn't interested in him. Suddenly, Mari was surprised when she saw Ji-hun there. She called him right away, but Ji-hun pretended like he didn't know Mari. Mari got mad because of that. She quickly ran toward Ji-hun to catch him. Ji-hun panicked when he saw that. He ran as fast as he could to avoid her. Ji-hun came out of the elevator. He stayed alert because Mari might be around, but it was too late. Mari suddenly appeared in front of him. She asked Ji-hun to explain everything to her. Mari's anger attracted everybody's attention there. They were watching and laughing at them. Ji-hun finally gave up. He told Mari to meet him in the backyard. He was actually afraid when he saw Mari's scary face. Mu Jiang received a text from Mari. He was extremely happy when he knew that Ji-hun had come back. He was heading to their office immediately. In the backyard, Ji-hun pretended to scold Mari because she was late. But suddenly, Mari slapped Ji-hun with a bucket of flowers. She took her frustration and anger out on him. She was angry because Ji-hun left her without saying anything. Fortunately, Mu Jiang came at the right time. Ji-hun could save himself from Mari because of him. But he was wrong. Apparently, Mu Jiang was mad at him too. Once he was close to him, he punched him right on the face. Because of that, Ji-hun finally apologized to them. After that, he couldn't keep smiling like a crazy person. He hoped that Mu Jiang and Mari could smile too when they saw his smile. But Mu Jiang and Mari refused to smile until Ji-hun told them about the truth. Ji-hun finally gave up. He told them that he didn't really intend to leave them. He asked Mari if she received and read his farewell letter. Mari was confused when she heard that. She remembered that in his farewell letter, Ji-hun only said goodbye and told her to feed the fish. Now it was Ji-hun's turn to be confused. He believed that he had written another letter to Mari. In that letter, Ji-hun explained his reason why he left them. Mari didn't respond to him because she was still mad, so Ji-hun finally told them about everything. He said that he found out that Min Chul was the real Ji-hyun's killer, so after the JQ Group's private party was over, he met Min Chul in his room to kill him, but he finally decided not to kill him. After that incident, Ji-hun decided to leave that city to calm his mind. He was confused about himself. He didn't understand what he really wanted. Now, after he finally understood himself better, he decided to come back. Mari felt bad for him when she heard his story, but she was still mad at him. She couldn't believe that Ji-hun left them without saying anything. It seemed like Ji-hun didn't consider them as friends. She hoped that next time, if Ji-hun had to go through hard time again, Ji-hun would go through it with them. Mari said that she would always be there for Ji-hun. After saying that, Mari left that place right away. It seemed like she still couldn't forgive Ji-hun for what he did to her. Ji-hun couldn't do anything about that. He kept thinking about what he did to Moo-jang and Mari. He had explained his real reason in a letter, but it seemed like what he did was really unforgivable. At the office, Mari checked Ji-hun's farewell letter again. She finally found another letter that Ji-hun meant. In that letter, Ji-hun explained why he left them. He wanted to find the purpose of why he charged his client for only 1,000 won. He realized that what he did all this time, especially what he did to Min Chul that night, was only to take revenge and not to uphold justice, so he asked Mari to wait for him until he finally found his purpose. Mari couldn't say anything when she read that. She felt really guilty because she had been rude to Ji-hun. The next day, Ji-hun came to his office. He checked his fish in the aquarium. But suddenly, he was surprised when he saw Moo-jang's face. Moo-jang was really happy to see Ji-hun there. He hugged him right away. The landlady also came there. She also looked happy to see Ji-hun again. But actually, the real reason why she came to that office was to ask Ji-hun to pay for the office rent. Apparently, they hadn't paid the rent for a year since Ji-hun left. But instead of avoiding her like usual, Ji-hun paid off his debt immediately. He also paid for the interests. Moo-jang and the landlady were surprised when they saw that. They thought that Ji-hun had won a lottery. Not long after that, Mari came to that office. Her guess that Ji-hun was actually a rich man turned out to be true. Then, she came to that office to apologize to Ji-hun for being rude to him, but to protect her dignity. She said that she came there because she wanted to meet Moo-jang, but Moo-jang didn't care about her. He was still curious about how much money Ji-hun actually had. Ji-hun told him that he once spent 2 billion won just to buy Min Jae's painting back then. Moo-jang was mad when he heard that. He was mad because Ji-hun managed to spend that much money to buy a painting, but he didn't pay the office rent that time. Apparently, Ji-hun did that because he wanted to understand Ju-young's reason. Now, he had understood why Ju-young charged her client for only 1,000 won, so he decided to continue their 1,000 won business, but he wouldn't manage the office with those 1,000 won. Then, Ji-hun asked Moo-jang and Mari to work at his office again. Moo-jang was excited when he heard that. He agreed to work there immediately, even though Mari was already working at Beck's law firm. She agreed to work with Ji-hun again. She hugged Ji-hun to tell him that she accepted his offer. The next day, Mari was confused when Ji-hun asked her to go to an office with him. Apparently, it was Min Chul's office. Min Chul was surprised when he saw Ji-hun there. He was getting more surprised when Ji-hun said that he missed him. Min Chul was confused by Ji-hun's sudden arrival. He suspected that Ji-hun had a wicked plan for him. He saw Ji-hun smiling absurdly in front of him. He was getting more confused when Ji-hun asked him to be his friend. Ji-hun also asked for some papers from him. Nobody knew what he was going to do with those papers. Then, Ji-hun told Min Chul to tell his boss that he had come back. Mari was confused when she saw that. She had no idea why Ji-hun didn't do anything when he met Ju-young's murderer. Ji-hun said that he would be mad if he was still his old self. But now, he had understood what justice really meant. He said that people should be punished for the crime they had committed. After that, Ji-hun and Mari visited Woo-suk in the prison. Woo-suk was mad at Ji-hun for not keeping his promise. It had been a year since Ji-hun promised that he would help him to get out of the prison. So, in order to get out of the prison, Ji-hun asked him to hold another trial for his charge. Since Woo-suk had no other option, he agreed to do what Ji-hun said. By doing that, they could investigate and solve Ju-young's case again. Then, Mari asked him to pay 1,000 won for hiring them as his lawyer. At the office, Min Hyuk was confused when he saw everybody looked so busy. Then, someone asked him to go to a room with him. In that room, Min Hyuk finally understood what was happening. He also saw how the JQ Group managed to commit their crime. They saw how the JQ Group forced people to sign the agreement they had made. At another place, Ji-hun asked Moo-jang and Mari to live in his house for a while. He was afraid if they might be in danger if they stayed at their old office. Mari looked at her grandfather's picture which was displayed on the window. She found out that her grandfather had something to do with Ju-young's case, but Ji-hun took that picture right away. He told Mari that her grandfather had nothing to do with this case. Mari was confused and surprised when Ji-hoon referred Mr. Beck as her grandfather. She had no idea how Ji-hoon found out about it. It was really easy for Ji-hoon to find out about it since Mari always came to Beck's law firm. She also had Beck as her surname. Early that day, Ji-hoon met with Mr. Beck. Mr. Beck told him that he was only a professional lawyer who defended his client as best as he could. He didn't care that if his client was a horrible person. Because of that, he wanted to send Mari to Ji-hoon's office so she could learn different things. He didn't want Mari to be a lawyer who defended a bad person like him. Mr. Beck also told Ji-hoon that he met Min Chul in the JQ Group's private party last year. It meant that he wasn't responsible for Ju-young's death. Then, Ji-hoon showed some evidence that Woo-suk wasn't guilty. The evidence showed that when the murder took place, Woo-suk was caught drinking in a bar. But he realized that the evidence wasn't enough to free Woo-suk from the prison. He knew that the JQ Group would do anything to defend their client, especially to consider that their lawyer was from Beck's law firm. Mari agreed with Ji-hoon. She admitted that her grandfather's law firm was really great at defending their client, so they needed to find another evidence. But Ji-hoon thought differently. He planned to use that picture as a bait. Moo Jang and Mari were confused when they heard that. Min Chul was busy playing golf at his office. Many people were watching him, including Ji-hoon. Min Chul was surprised when he saw Ji-hoon at his office again. He asked what Ji-hoon wanted from him this time. He was getting more confused when Ji-hoon suddenly took his golf club and smiled like a crazy person. Ji-hoon pretended to hit the golf ball, but he was actually just trying to scare Min Chul. Apparently, Ji-hoon came there to show the picture of Woo-suk to Min Chul. He wanted Min Chul to think that he had many other evidence. He hoped Min Chul would get frightened by that. Then, Ji-hoon told Min Chul that he couldn't kill a random person like he used to back then. Suddenly, he hugged him and pretended like he and Min Chul were close friends. Turned out, Moo Jang and Mari were also in that place. They took Ji-hoon and Min Chul's picture when they hugged each other. The next day, while Min Chul was being interviewed as a CEO of Cayman Funds, he saw Ji-hoon again in that place. It looked like Ji-hoon was trying to terror him. Min Chul began to get frustrated because of him. Ji-hoon suddenly greeted and hugged him. He also smiled absurdly like usual, and as usual, Moo Jang and Mari were also around. They took picture of Ji-hoon and Min Chul when they hugged each other. At another place, Min Hyuk went to the office of the prosecutor. He didn't come there to work as a prosecutor, but to help Eugene to investigate and solve the JQ Group's case. Meanwhile, Ji-hoon showed a picture to Choi Ki-suk, the CEO of the JQ Group. It was the picture of Ji-hoon and Min Chul when they hugged each other. By showing him that picture, Ji-hoon wanted Ki-suk to think that Min Chul had betrayed him. Then, Ki-suk sent that picture to Min Chul and asked him about it. Min Chul panicked when he saw that picture. He told Ki-suk that it was just a misunderstanding, but the problem was, Ji-hoon planned to hold another trial to investigate Ju-young's murder case. In order to convince his boss that he didn't betray him, Min Chul offered himself to take care of that case. He planned to end that case by killing Woo-suk. The next day, Woo-suk was suddenly brought to a hospital. Ji-hoon panicked when he found out about that. He believed that Woo-suk was taken there because he was going to be killed. At the hospital, Min Chul disguised himself as a doctor. Apparently, he had been coordinating with the wardens who guarded Woo-suk's room. Then, Min Chul went to the room and injected some poison to Woo-suk's infusion tube. After that, he left that room right away. He was happy when he heard the code blue alarm sound. He thought that he managed to kill Woo-suk. Not long after that, Ji-hoon arrived at the hospital. He saw Min Hyuk and Eugene there. Their faces looked sad. Apparently, Ji-hoon had prepared for everything. He knew that Min Chul was going to kill Woo-suk. When Min Chul injected some poison to Woo-suk's infusion tube, his poison didn't work because the infusion tube wasn't connected to Woo-suk's body. Min Hyuk and Eugene were already standing by at the hospital. As soon as Min Chul left that room, they came to that room and took the infusion tube which contained Min Chul's poison. They planned to make it as the evidence. They had the poison infusion tube and the CCTV footage as their evidence. Because of that, Woo-suk was finally released from the prison. Meanwhile, Min Chul was named a suspect for the murder attempt. Ki-suk was really angry when he found out about that. Ji-hoon knew what Ki-suk was going to do next, so he asked Mari to go to Beck's law firm and find a document about the JQ Group. Meanwhile, he was following Min Chul because he believed that Ki-suk was going to kill him. Ki-suk gave an address of a place to Min Chul. He told him to hide in that place. Min Chul had no idea that he was actually waited by a hitman there. That hitman was ordered by Ki-suk to kill him. Ki-suk was afraid if Min Chul told them about everything when he was getting arrested. When Min Chul arrived in that place, he finally realized that he was going to get murdered. He ran away from that place immediately. Ji-hoon also arrived in that place. He was already inside of Min Chul's car. Min Chul told him to open the car's door, but he refused. He wanted Min Chul to promise that he would work together with him, because he didn't want to get killed. Min Chul quickly agreed to work together with Ji-hoon. While they were in the car, Min Chul finally told Ji-hoon about everything. He said that the person who ordered him to kill Ju-young was Ki-suk. Ki-suk told him to kill Ju-young because Ju-young saw that confidential document. Ki-suk suddenly called Min Chul. Ji-hoon answered his call right away. He heard the same voice with what he heard when his father died back then. Ji-hoon introduced himself to him. He told him that his name was Ji-hoon. Then, he ended that call. Ki-suk called Min-chul's number again. Ji-hoon answered it and ended the call immediately. He did that because he wanted to make Ki-suk angry. Ki-suk called Min-chu's number again and Ji-hoon answered it seriously this time. He asked Ki-suk to meet with him, and Ki-suk agreed. At another place, Mari went to her grandfather's room secretly. She wanted to find the document of the JQ group that Ji-hoon told her about. Unfortunately, she didn't know the password of the computer. But suddenly, she received a text from her grandfather. Her grandfather gave her the password of the computer. He knew that Mari was looking for the document of the JQ group, but he pretended like he didn't know about anything. He wanted to help Mari because he wanted Mari to become an honest lawyer. Mari finally found the document. When she checked it, she found that the document contained the repeal of regulation plan about opioid pain relievers. After she saw that, Mari called Ji-hoon immediately. Apparently, in order to develop the JQ Group's pharmaceutical industry, Ki-suk bribed some chairman into changing the regulation about narcotics. He needed to change the regulation so his company could use narcotics to make their medicine. In other words, Ki-suk bought the law for his personal gain. While Ji-hoon was heading to his meeting place with Ki-suk, a car from another direction was driving toward him. Apparently, Ki-suk ordered his subordinate to crash Ji-hoon's car. He believed that Ji-hoon wouldn't survive that car accident, but when he was about to leave that place, Ji-hoon suddenly appeared in front of him. Ki-suk and his subordinates were surprised when they saw Ji-hoon there. It felt like they were seeing a ghost. Just like usual, Ji-hoon had prepared for everything. He knew that it wasn't going to be easy to deal with a powerful man like Ki-suk. Then, Ji-hoon sat down near Ki-suk. He told him about the car accident that made him late. He indirectly mocked Ki-suk for making such a wicked plan for him. Then, he mentioned about how Ki-suk bribed the chairman to change the regulation. Ji-hoon wanted to show Ki-suk that he knew everything about Ki-suk's secret, and because of that, Ki-suk should worry because he was going to get arrested soon. Ki-suk asked Ji-hoon about Min-chul's whereabouts, but Ji-hoon told him to find him by himself. After that, he left that place. The reason of why Ji-hoon came to that place was only to make Ki-suk angry, and his plan worked. As soon as Ji-hoon left that place, Ki-suk told his subordinates to find Min-chul soon. At another place, Yi-jin and Min-hyuk came to Fire Bear's place. Turned out, it was the place where they were hiding Min-chul. They recorded Min-chul when he told them about everything. Min-chul confessed that Ki-suk was the person who ordered him to commit his crime. Before Ji-hoon came to Fire Bear's place, he picked Mari up first. Then, they came there together to show them the document of the JQ group. It was the document about the regulatory arrangement. When they checked the document, they didn't find the list about the people who had received the slush money from the JQ group. When Min-chul heard them, he remembered about something. He told them that he had made a copy of that list, and he hid that copy at the office. After they heard that, they told Mu Jang to get that document soon. Even though Mu Jang was afraid, he finally came to Min-chul's office. He managed to find the document in the attic. The next day, Yi-jin announced the crime that the JQ group had committed to the public. Everybody in South Korea was surprised when they found out about that. Because of that news, the situation became worse, especially for the corrupt politicians who got involved in that case, including Ki-suk. Ki-suk got more frustrated after he saw the video that Ji-hoon sent him. In that video, Min-chul confessed everything about the crime he had committed, but Min-hyuk and his team couldn't arrest Ki-suk because they still lacked evidence. They hadn't found strong evidence that could send Ki-suk to jail. Min-chul's confession wasn't enough to send Ki-suk to jail. Suddenly, Min-chul asked them about how many more days he was going to be imprisoned. Yi-jin told him that he was going to be imprisoned for life. After Min-chul heard that, he finally called Ki-suk. He asked him to help him. If Ki-suk wanted to save him, he promised that he would do anything that Ki-suk asked him. He even offered himself to surrender so Ki-suk wouldn't get arrested. Then, Min-chul asked for a permission to go to the toilet. When he arrived in the toilet, he quickly escaped from that place through the window. After that, Min-chul called Ji-hoon. He asked him to meet him somewhere. Ji-hoon had no idea that Min-chul was trapping him, so he came to that place right away. Min-chul smiled when he saw him. Then, Min-chul gave a signal to Ki-suk. Suddenly, Ki-suk and his subordinates appeared in that place. Ji-hoon was surprised when he saw them there. He couldn't do anything to run away or fight them back. While Ji-hoon was being beaten up by Ki-suk's subordinates, he suddenly smiled. Ki-suk was annoyed when he saw that smile. Ji-hoon knew that he was going to die, so he asked Ki-suk about one thing that he wanted to know the most. Ki-suk laughed at Ji-hoon. He thought that he was going to become the winner, so he confessed that he was the person who was responsible for Ju-yeon's death. After that, he took his gun out of his pocket. He put that gun on Ji-hoon's forehead, ready to shoot him to death. Then, he told Ji-hoon about what he did to his father back then. That evening, before Yoon-sub killed himself, Ki-suk warned Yoon-sub that if they managed to find out the truth about that case, then the fact that Ji-hoon was actually his son would be revealed too. He told him that it would be very bad for Ji-hoon's career and reputation. Because of that, Yoon-sub decided to take his own life. he wanted to protect Ji-hoon. Ji-hoon was angry when he heard that. Suddenly, he pushed Ki-suk away and tried to run away immediately. But unfortunately, Ki-suk shot Ji-hoon with his gun. He shot him for several times to make sure that he was dead. Ji-hoon finally fell into the sea with the answer that he was looking for all this time. The next day, Min-chul came to the office of the prosecutor and surrendered him. Min-hyuk and Yi-jin panicked when they saw Min-chul there, especially after Min-chul lied that Min-hyuk and Yi-jin had kidnapped and imprisoned him for days. They had also forced him to give false testimony. He said that they wanted him to blame Ki-suk. Because of that, Min-hyuk and Yi-jin had to attend a hearing. They were asked to be held accountable for their mistakes. Min-hyuk got mad because of that, but he had no idea how to defend himself and explain everything to them. But apparently, all of this was only a part of Yi-jin and Ji-hoon's plan. Yi-jin suddenly showed a flash drive to them. She said that the flash drive was going to be the answer of this case. Then, they played the video in that flash drive. Turned out, it was a video of Ki-suk when he was about to kill Ji-hoon. In that video, Ki-suk confessed the crimes he had committed. Everybody in that room was surprised when they watched that video, especially Min-hyuk. Min-hyuk was disappointed because nobody told him about the secret plan. All this time, it was Yi-jin who told Min-chul to pretend to trap Ji-hoon. They did that because they needed Ki-suk's confession. But Min-hyuk was still confused. He asked Yi-jin about Ji-hoon's whereabouts. He asked if he really died after Ki-suk killed him. Yi-jin didn't answer him and rushed to Ki-suk's house to arrest him instead. With that strong evidence, Ki-suk couldn't defend himself anymore this time. Yi-jin suddenly remembered the time when Ji-hoon told her about his plan. He said that he wanted to trap Ki-suk so he could confess all of his crimes. He didn't care if he had to sacrifice himself. Yi-jin rejected that horrible idea right away, but Ji-hoon said that it didn't make any difference since he had died for a long time. He also died the moment Ju-young died that time. Not long after that, the news about Ki-suk's case was broadcast around South Korea. The public was really mad when they found out about that case. They demanded that the case was handled by a special prosecutor who was appointed by the president himself. The public would suggest the prosecutor themselves. They needed the special prosecutor because they had to avoid conflicts of interest, especially to consider that there were many senior executives who got involved in this case, and apparently, the special prosecutor that they suggested was Ji-hoon. Apparently, that night, Ji-hoon only got shot on his arm, but to deceive Ki-suk into thinking that he had died, he jumped into the sea and swam as far as he could. Mu-jang and Mari were already standing by and waiting for him on another side. As soon as Ji-hoon came out of the water, he exaggerated his pain and pretended to get cold, so Mu-jang and Mari took care of him. He managed to save the camera recorder that he had been hiding in his pocket. Finally, they managed to solve the JQ Group's case in less than 100 days. They arrested everybody who got involved in that case, including the corrupt politicians who had received the slush money from the JQ Group. Everybody who knew Ji-hoon, including the landlady and the villagers, were very happy and proud with Ji-hoon. They thought that Ji-hoon was a really great lawyer. At the office, Mu-jang and Mari planned to increase their charge since Ji-hoon was really famous now, but Ji-hoon rejected their idea right away. They told them that he didn't become a lawyer because of money, but because of that 1,000 won. He believed that he should keep his service affordable so he could help many people, especially those who couldn't afford a proper lawyer because they were so expensive. And the most important thing was, he wanted to be known as 1,001 lawyer. Because of that, he would never change his charge no matter what. He would always charge his client for 1,001 until he died.